Smallwood. Here. Counselor Hamlin.
Present.
Counselor Lee.
Here.
Counselor Exner.
Here.
Counselor Schultz.
Here.
Mayor Polito.
Here. All right, we'll start off with our agenda review for tonight's meeting, and then we'll get into our work session, which tonight's on our council rules for boards, commissions, and committees policy. So tonight we have two presentations, one from the Sandy Watershed Council on their annual report. I believe it's Steve Wise that's coming in to do that. And then Clackamas County Soil and Water Conservation District presentation. You might remember Jan brought up having this presentation done during our council report. I believe he's on his way out, correct?
Yeah, he's leaving at the end of the year to be the executive director in Washington.
Awesome. Thank you for helping get that set up. Consent agenda, we have just a small one with our council minutes on there tonight. And then under ordinances, we're gonna be looking at a rezone for the Sandy Health Clinic. Anybody have any questions on that before we get into it tonight? Okay, new business, Sandy Operations Bus Barn Construction Contract. Questions, comments? Then the picking sign variance, questions on that? For me, I don't know, just the white backing versus the black backing, knowing the difference in what that looks like and what the appearance is. I just didn't have time to do much research on that.
Okay.
So, I haven't been real deep into the sign ordinance, so just understand the kind of the thought process we're going through there. And then we have the Pleasant Street Duplex appeal. That will be a quasi judicial hearing. So anything before we get into that
I
tonight?
just had a question about that. Would that zone allow for housing above the commercial structure as an alternative?
That zone currently does allow for that.
Wouldn't be the variance.
Right.
It could be an outright use then.
I'm not sure it's outright or it's.
I can take a look at the code, I'm pretty sure it would be allowed outright already, right?
But in that case, it interacts with the commercial establishment. The only question I have on that is this, going into tonight, what year did we start really, the council, start really looking into the Pleasant Street, commercial zoning of Pleasant Street? I know our master planning effort was just about a year and a half ago, but when did we really, prior to that though, there were some zone reclassifications and stuff that took place. You guys kind of have memory of
Long
some
before
of
my
that?
time.
Was it?
It was before my time on council.
When the
Maybe it's been
rezoning
around longer
happened.
yet, so.
I mean, outside of the more recent master planning, I don't.
It's been part of C1 for
So for a long time.
as long as I know of.
We've got a
yeah.
C1 designation on Pleasant
It's a long
Street.
time. Yeah.
That's good knowledge going into this.
That, it's always been since I've been on council.
Yeah, it's probably the previous complex.
So then we'll get into our city manager report and then our committee and council reports. With that, we'll get into our work session on our council rules, boards, commissions, committees, policy. Jordan?
Yeah. So, not a long staff report. The purpose of this work session really is to dive into the council rules. The last time these rules were looked at was in the spring of 2018. I believe at the time there was a review and some comments and some edits, but no substantial changes were adopted except for the boards and commissions process. So there is this administrative policy 100, which is attached, and we have the printouts so we can go through it, which kind of governs sort of the administrative procedures for how the boards are filled, the vacancies are filled, and the bylaws and terms and things like that. But at the same time, there was this effort to move the boards and commissions from the council establishing them by ordinance to resolution. And so what that did is basically remove the advisory boards from the city code, except for in the case of the newly established Arts Commission, which has different rules than the rest of the advisory boards. And this became, this was around the time that I started, and a couple new counselors, that there was still the topic of revisiting these rules and this new policy and how boards and commission members were appointed, how the people that were applying were interviewed and sort of brought forward in front of the full council. And one of the issues that came up when this happened, when this change happened, was we finally established terms and term limits for board and commission members. And when that took place, we didn't think about when these terms started, for the existing members and what term they were on, and what year we should go back and apply their terms to. So that's a question that staff has for the council is, how do you want to implement that, those term limits for existing board members? It's easy going forward as the council appoints new members. We establish that as the start of their term, and they get 2 4-year terms. Most boards and commissions have bylaws, I think, except for maybe a couple. But the most recent were the Parks and Trails Advisory Board, that the council adopted their bylaws just a couple, probably 3 or 4 or 5 months ago now. So, the outstanding questions, besides just doing if the council has any comments on the other council rules, was whether we want to formalize and put into the council rules this interview and appointment process that we've been using across the board for all advisory boards and commissions. The distinction there is that the way that we've been doing it is actually not what's in the rules. So I believe it's for the advisory boards, the advisory board itself does the sort of interview and vetting process and then forwards a recommendation to the council. For some committees, that's the way we've sort of been doing it, but we've also been doing this hybrid approach where we've had the chair of the board and then also a city councilor, the city council liaison, a part of those interviews, and then those get forwarded to the council. And then for the commissions, like Planning Commission, Arts Commission, and Budget Committee, it's an interview in front of the full council. And that, while it seems to me like to be, a very transparent, open process, it's also really hard to schedule. And we have like the Arts Commission, for example, and especially as vacancies occur, you're talking about this rolling, possibly like constant interviews, that could be occurring, unless the council wants to establish just an annual appointment process, which so far we've had issues with just filling vacancies. And so I think the approach of trying to just continue to fill positions is probably the right one right now. So that's something you might want to consider, is whether to have the commissions in those appointments happen the same way that the advisory boards do, where you have an interview panel with counselors and the chairs from the commission participate in that review and interview. So, yeah, and then the other one that I mentioned was setting terms or establishing the terms for existing board members. The council rules, I believe, called for a review of the rules every couple of years, and that's probably to make sure that as new city councilors come on board and are elected, that they're a part of a review of what the rules are. I can't recall if that was proposed to be changed like to every 4 years, or if
It was
I think it was 4.
it was 4
and
announced every 2. Okay.
But it's not approved yet, cause it's just draft.
These are just the
So it's
draft
still every 4
markups.
years,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
we're good.
Well,
I have a question that goes even further back
Uh-huh.
than that, and that is, why is the Arts Council a commission, unlike all the other advisory boards? Was there a reason for that?
What I recollect from on it was that's what Kim had suggested for that particular one. Before that time, that commission, that board commission didn't exist, didn't have that group at all. And so when putting that forward, I think there were some examples of some other communities that
Mhm.
made it a commission.
That's
That's what they
exactly
were
right.
going off of.
Mhm.
So that was what was recommended for that particular one at the time.
So can you clarify again, I know we've done this a couple of times, but the difference between a commission
Mhm.
and an advisory committee is?
Well, besides the name, so in this city, there's a definition, as opposed to, you can call an advisory board a commission if you like. But I think the way that the approach was with, in the rules and in the admin policy was the commissions were gonna be those ones that are either adopted by ordinance, like the city council adopted ordinance Title 18 in the city code now, the Arts Commission, or they have some sort of state statute that is governing, a lot of their work, like the Budget Committee or the Planning Commission. So it's not a budget commission, it's a budget committee, but committees and commissions are distinct from the advisory boards, because the advisory boards in Sandy are appointed by or created by resolution and have their own process for filling vacancies, et cetera, than the commission.
Are they more
Yeah.
powerful than?
Well, so there's different rules for like the Planning Commission in terms of, sort of how to remove them. They have special like privileges as like, you know, they're reviewing land use, you know, applications. Yeah. For the Arts Commission, I think it was more, there was the expectation that the Arts Commission would go out and get their own grants and maybe other fundraising. So there's some things in that Title 18 about they have basically their own budget approved by the council, which we do through the budget process, and, you know, doing things like the mural restorations and stuff like that. So I think that we wanted to give them a little more authority or independence from, separate from the advisory board. But other than that, the rest of their, things that they are charged to do are very similar to advisory board. They make recommendations to the.
I'll comment here
Yeah.
a little bit. It's not how I recall. Advisory board, I thought, was to incorporate the city into the council's understanding of what people wanted to do and to be able to draw in some of different comments from in a way that we weren't really getting to begin with. So you send out a message that we'd like to have some people comment on our parks. Nobody would do that. So as I remember, we were trying to put together an advisory, somebody that would comment, somebody that would commit enough time to be able to come in and look at the plans and such. And the difference between an advisory board that we were looking for them to advise us so we could make decisions, and the commissions was that both commissions seem to have, at least from what I look at in the rules and regulations, is that, that's not the right word, but rules anyway, is that they have decisional powers. And both of them are given some sort of authority to be able to make decisions on their own and to advise us too, but independent of the council. So sort of the planning commission makes a lot of decisions without the city council being involved, unless there's an appeal of some kind. In the case of the Arts Commission is they have a small budget and a little bit of things to put the city, getting grants and monies that will be donated to them that they can be able to find a way to spend it the correct way. But also both committees have, I think, the ability to bubble up advice and listen to council and giving them direction about what they should do.
Do you mind if I try to give you a bad analogy to
Go.
add clarity to what you just said, maybe? So if, let's say we were gonna get a new park, Parks Advisory Committee could give us, advise the council on what they would like to see in that park, when an Arts Commission could essentially make a decision as to what's going to actually go into that park.
I don't think that's ever happened, so I'm not sure.
I don't know, I'm trying to
Yeah, I'm
figure
not
out
sure
where the
that
difference
would
in
be-
power.
Well, the Arts Commission's so young that it hasn't
Right.
had an opportunity to do that.
Right.
They also don't have a budget to be able to do that. But
They got about $8,000 or something. We gave them, but it's pretty minimal.
But they did do like refurbished,
Right.
some paintings and whatnot without, kind of on their own, they took that,
We
by
did give
them.
them direction that we said we, as a city council, we wanted to see them do those. things.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But they just
But
took
they,
their own.
absolutely, and so, yeah, and I think by definition, like you explained, it's like quasi judicial with decision making
Sure.
versus advising council, it's kind of.
So you'd like us, basically though, we're looking for direction from us on how we'd like to appoint these committee members,
Mm-hmm.
and then how we would implement terms.
Yeah, the terms one is tricky because you want to think about how to implement that, when to establish. Right now, it says no matter when you get appointed, it starts the January of the year you were appointed,
Okay.
which is kind of awkward
And then
for
do,
some members.
do we have any kind of record keeping, I mean, is for Tyler record keeping on when each member had originally joined a committee?
Not for every member. I mean, there's some members that have been on boards for a very long time that I
Yeah.
couldn't tell you
But
when they.
So do we have like people that are trying to get into these committees that can't because people don't move off of them? Or do we have the opposite problem, which I'm way more aware of, where there aren't enough people? Cause it's sometimes like if we're having an issue with somebody, figuring out how to best utilize them may be one of the best approaches versus just ending them with a term.
Right, but I also think that being on a lot of different boards and stuff, there tends to be this, if you don't have a term limit where you actually force the hand of that board to go out and recruit and find a new member, there tends to be kind of the cycle of, well, we're all so darn busy, maybe Jessica should just continue on in your role. When there's actually the creation of a vacancy, there's more of a proactive approach by that board to go out and get new blood and people involved in it.
So, the comments that were made when we were doing this was the fact that we don't have full boards, and we can't get enough people to even apply for those full boards. And so the conversation was to not necessarily have term limits, but have, follow the term that you were in. Doesn't mean and then reapply, so that if there was a line up there, but it wasn't saying you can only serve 2 terms and then you have to be off for 2 terms or a term. It was because otherwise we would not have some of the commissions and some of the things there. There's just not enough people. And so to basically say you have to remove it, now we don't even have a quorum because there's only 3 people that were part of it, and they would really like to, but you can. So then the discussion was around that you could continue, but you'd have to reapply back to the council so that the council had the opportunity to pass on something.
It does say members may serve only 2 consecutive terms unless no other candidates apply.
Okay, we're gonna go, Carl, Lori, and then.
So I have a concern. Some of our boards have been on, members have been on a long time. And in some cases, I don't think there'd be any issue for me to continue them, but I'm not willing to express that specific persons at this point. But I think there are some issues in some of our committees that I think I would be interested in seeing us rotate them out and rotate others in and see if we can find some new blood in some cases. I think there's an opportunity, and I believe it would be helpful for the city in some cases.
That's where I tend to let lead go.
Well, I'm gonna second basically what Carl said, cause, I mean, I think 17 years, 20 years serving in a single committee, you need some fresh perspective there. I don't care who you are. That's a long time to sit in a position, and I think you lack that, perspective, so, I'm definitely in favor of term limits.
I think.
Oh, I'm sorry, John, did you ask, I didn't wanna say John.
Hey,
John and then
I'm
John.
just
gonna third it?
No, I'm just going off what you.
Well, I'm just gonna ask a
Dan
dumb
was-
question, but are we having a problem somewhere? Cause I think just for transparency's sake, I'd like to know if that's the reason why we're looking at this.
Well, no, I mean, I think that this has been brought up a lot of times. This has been an ongoing conversation, at least in the last year, I think, and then there was obviously conversations on these very rule changes on council previously. But I would say, yes, there is a problem. I would say, is that problem just like one individual on one committee? No, that's not the problem. The problem is on a variety of our committees, different committees with multiple different people on committees, that is kind of bubbling this to the surface. That's my take on it. I know Jan had.
Yeah, I was going to repeat pretty much the same thing. There's some people that have served more than 15 years, and we really need to have new opinions, new outlooks. So I really am in favor of some kind of a term limit process. Maybe if you're talking about when people start, maybe everybody new is in their first term and everybody that was there before is in their second, and then we go from there, rather than trying to recreate the wheel.
Right.
Will we hold ourselves accountable to the same standards?
Well, hold on, we're all going around. Yeah.
So just one thought on that too. It's perfectly appropriate to have a limit, term limit, so that you can, for when we don't know or there's not one that's existing, you can absolutely say, okay, as Jan points out, we're gonna just sort of begin, with somebody or people that have been on for longer than X amount of time, we'll consider this to be your second term. The other thing I think, and I think you can write it absolutely to say, that the council can always, appoint somebody, to another term, even if it's supposed to be only 2. I mean,
Sure.
you get into those
Yep.
issues of there's not anybody that's willing to serve, kind of thing. I think the other thing with respect to most boards, advisory boards particularly, is if you think about it as really an extension of the council. And you're having people that are there, as Carl said, to kind of mostly for those boards give you advice, give you perspective on whatever the issue is that they focus on. And in most of our for most of our communities, those folks also generally just serve at the pleasure of the council. I mean, it's not something, you may have a term, and that's great, because that sets up sort of an expectation of how long somebody would be on. But you can also have it such that, you know, if you chose, because they really are just sort of this extension of the council doing a kind of a specific thing to advise the council, to say, if it's, for some reason, the majority of the council felt that an individual wasn't working out, so to speak, that they could be removed because they serve at the pleasure of the council. So that's another option for you. You don't have to do that.
That's a harder option.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I just wanted to be sure you knew that that was an option.
Sure. I'm gonna go Jeremy and then Bethany, and then John.
Yeah, I think it just goes back to when we, not having, the way it was worded is there was no one there applying for the position, they could be appointed. It was just that there's no one, there's so many openings. And maybe it should be, instead of 7-member advisory boards, down to 5-member advisory boards. And a lot of them are 5, but if I recall correctly, and they talked about going to 7, it was like, well, we can't even get to 5. You know, it's just trying to shake the trees there and have people fall out that are willing to be on some of these.
I think our wives are both on a committee.
Oh, I can tell you, mine's not necessarily wanting to be on that committee.
Mine either.
So, but the point is you just can't get anybody to do it. And so when you have willing participants, it makes that narrative a little bit harder to have in a small community where, everyone knows everyone. It just, answering why without being able to do that very hard conversation with someone we shouldn't be probably having those conversations with outside of this, maybe an exec session.
Bethany.
On the kind of flip side is like, we've been talking about this since I was on Parks Board, setting term limits and all that stuff, and it's, as an advisory board member, I feel like having term limits is helpful, because like, as like a young person, we're trying to get to join our board, and they're like, oh, it's just forever, like, that sounds scary, I don't wanna quit.
That's a good point.
But if
I
you're
wanna do
like,
this forever.
this is a 2-year term, if you like it, you can, or 4-year, whatever, you keep going, if you don't, no pressure, cause that your term is over.
I think that's the difference between a term limit and a term.
I would agree, and before, because I know I wanted to give John a chance to speak because of, he's kind of pitching in there. I would agree with that, just to kind of preempt that a little bit, is we all are in terms. But we are then held up for election, right? I think maybe the preference is, with some of my concern on these committees, is that when their term expires, they then continue on to the next term without any kind of council oversight or review.
And that's where it's supposed to be for review. I cut you off.
Well, so then along with that too, I know Parks Board I don't think is full right now. Library is, and we actually had another member come, or another community member come and was interested in joining, so I'm not sure if that historic, like, we can never fill them is going to be the same for.
I think the library is the only one that's always full since I've been here.
Really?
Yeah.
Is, how close are we at?
Parks has 5
Okay.
right
Is it
now.
trans-
So-
And to address like the inability to get people on committees, I think as we grow, like just Parks has gotten 2 new members in the last 5 months.
Yeah.
And they've just moved to the community. So I think that there's potential, as the city grows in population, and just how we get out there, as a community, and let people know that these opportunities are available. And I think that you have people moving into this area who want to be participatory in some of the things that are going on and help make decisions and make the community better, so.
John? Carl?
So, because I don't know the specific issues that are referenced, but it sounds like there's multiple, I'm happy to offer myself up, whether David's suggestion is one that the council would like around having the tough conversations, but if there's issues, I think if we're not having conversations with the members to inform them of the issues that we're having, and don't have some kind of feedback mechanism, I think that's important. I think there's a lot of unawareness. A lot of the time, people may think they're doing a good job or doing the right thing, and nobody's ever had a conversation with them to tell them otherwise. And so, if there are issues, I'm happy to have those conversations with people. I'll take one off your plate. But, I mean, seriously, like, if there are issues, I'd be more than happy to step in and pull people aside and have a conversation with them, so.
Well, shoot, you just already mostly said what I wanted to say. Close enough. I had a little bit to that. I think there is some issues in a couple of our different committees. I do think, though, that it's difficult to make that harsh decision decision, a hard decision, and then rumor gets out there, it's like, a little bit like starting to fire everybody pretty soon. Nobody wants to join hands because you're gonna get fired right away, or at least you think you might. On the other hand, we have a small city, and I do believe that just because we have a small city, sometimes situations need to be resolved. And
Mhm.
we should just take the hard step and try to be kind, because this is really about participation. It's really not something that, we don't pay these people, or we
Right.
expect them to come in the evenings at their own time and all that. It's just, it is hard to say, you know, you're not good, we want you out of here. But on the other hand, if it's causing problems.
And if I could just comment back, I think that's a piece that we don't have a communication mechanism to get back to folks and let them know how it's going. As I think a lot of the time, it'll kind of build up some of that pressure. And if I'm recalling probably back to about a year ago, where we had one of our board members, I won't mention by name, we had staff even commenting about their role and connection to the city, which wasn't the most appropriate interaction, but I can nearly guarantee there's probably never been a conversation with that individual about the interactions on that board and the interactions, how they could be better, or anybody's perspective. And I think it might go a long way, because I hate to see somebody that's willing to give, and give freely to the city and volunteer their time that we haven't given structure and feedback to ensure we're getting the best out of them that we can, and they're also getting some feedback back as well in areas that they can improve, so.
So I agree with all that. I do though wanna say that this is not about, you know, 1, 2, 3 different individuals that, and that's all good and should happen, so I'm not saying that. But this is not all coming up the result of, you know, trying to get rid of people. This is coming up as a means of saying that we have a variety of different committees. We have terms that expire with individuals that then, for the most part, then just continue on into their next term. And we don't wanna say, hey, everybody that's been on, you lump of people, we're gonna step back, we're gonna remove you. Instead, I think it just becomes a better of a process for us as a city and as a city council, as these roles come to an expiration date, to advertise them out to the community, to conduct an interview process, to put something into place, and just make sure that we're doing our due diligence on these committees to make sure we're having the best representatives of our community.
And I appreciate that, but I think that this situation, it's obvious there's a catalyst for why we're evaluating.
I think you're looking for a catalyst, and I think that we all kind of know what we're talking about when we say there's a catalyst to this. But I'm saying that this is something that has been brought up by Councilor Exner at several different city council meetings
We even
throughout
talked
the
about it at
year.
our goal setting
We've
session.
talked about it at our goal setting. This was talked about with a previous council. This is something that was always on the council to-do list, whether or not we had any problem with an individual on a committee. That's. In fact, I don't even know if we're having this meeting talking about this today if Councilor Exner doesn't bring it up at our meeting like 3 meetings ago. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if I can remember what it was. Oh, maybe it should be up to the liaisons of each committee to talk to them about the new rules and term limits and things like that in
Sure.
kind of a gentle, coordinated way, since we're the ones who meet with them.
Yeah, I will say when I was on Parks Board and this was brought up, having, you know, term limits or whatever, some people were like, they're kicking us off, cause they didn't understand what this meant, so I do think having that would be very helpful, just like a.
So let me ask this, since we're looking for direction, how do we like the process that's been going on or kind of evolving into over the last year? Cause where it looks like we've been going with our appointments in a process is having a representative, the board chair, having a member of our council, usually the council liaison, as part of kind of the interview committee, and I think we had staff part of, we might have had staff like.
Yeah, usually it's
Yeah,
the,
like a
yeah,
staff
staff
the
liaison is
staff
on that.
liaison.
Yeah, and then that committee has then kind of brought forth a recommendation to council.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
so I like it for the advisory boards.
Mhm.
I think it's good, but I'd like some feedback from you guys who've been with the commissions on whether you think that's a way that you wanna do the commissions, or if you'd like to continue.
I think the commissions, like the planning commission, is a different process altogether because it has a different role. It has a very legal role that puts our whole city could put our whole city in a lawsuit by
Absolutely.
how they react and how they do, and also should have that, they're an extension of the council in a way for visioning and some of the things that we've done, but they are completely separated. Am I right, David?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if the lines are, completely black and white, but they are unique. There's a state statute that sort of, has bearing on how they're appointed, how they're removed, what the composition is. They absolutely are, authorized to make decisions that you often never see, and they're final, and, So I think that the budget committee and the planning commission are the two that I think would have their own, they still can have terms, they, all of that, but they have I think a slightly different process in terms of how you approach them.
So that would be my recommendation, is to keep that different process. I don't know how the budget one ever has a process.
There isn't one.
Because we can't get enough people to apply for it.
Yeah, that is the process.
We're literally begging you, are you breathing and you live in Sandy? Please come twice.
One thing that's, I would
So-
say is that our commission is sort of a hybrid, but more towards the advisory side of the world. I don't know that they're old enough yet or mature enough yet to really be able to make significant decisions, and maybe down the road, a dozen years or so, they'll be in something like the planning commission. But at the moment, it's, excuse me, for those who are listening, it's relatively immature. Just they are trying to find their way a lot. And I think eventually it will be something that might be much more important, but right now, we've got a few $1,000s, few commission type of questions to make and answer. I do agree with though, Jerry, about the planning commission. I think it's got its own process. I will add though that one of the things that I felt very uncomfortable with is you had a group of people out here listening to us say, this person doesn't have a very good repertoire, and this person has a difficulty in speaking, and that person doesn't have the experience that we would like to have. That's a little uncomfortable for me. When we got a volunteer, the other way that we did it, where we had an interview process in a room somewhere else, and afterwards we discussed their pros and cons, it would get pretty honest and direct, if you want to call it, and then come back to the council and reply for any kind of questions you might have, but you might be able to soft pedal some of the things that really were, I don't know if you want to have somebody tore down in front of a TV and other people. It just doesn't seem.
I agree 110%. We never had done that way until just here a year or two ago, and Kim wanted to change that whole process and have everything here. But then the last time we did it upstairs, and it was just, we had Jerry, and how I got on the planning commission, and same thing with you, and a much more, for those exact same reasons. It's just not we're not Congress, we're the Senate, we're not drilling people, and they're not getting paid to be,
Right.
to
Right
take that
through the
type of,
polls.
I don't wanna say abuse, it's not abuse, but I think it is kind of an abuse when you're doing it the way
It's
that
definitely
was done.
intimidating.
Yeah, it's a little bit different process there, and then those are recommended to, because we aren't always to interview everyone, because we can't all get together at the same time.
And sometimes our selection is based, in my mind anyway, based on the mix of the people. Sometimes you'll have a real strong board, or maybe next time you have a kind of a leaderless board, and you need somebody who's that A personality. So there may be a reason that's more than just they have a lot of experience in construction.
So last time we had a planning commission appointment that we needed to make, we put together an ad hoc committee of myself and the two former members of the planning commission that are on our council, as well as the chair of the planning commission. And then that ad hoc committee came up with some recommendations to put in front of the council. So that is similar to kind of this committee process, but it's a little different, where I think the council kind of took the bull by the horn and drove the process a little bit more during that. Is that kind of where we would go? Other communities have also done similar to what we've done with these panel interviews, and it sounds like we don't like. Happy Valley has the mayor appoint and consented by council, right? So then that's a real heavy-handed approach. So, what direction are we looking at for those?
I like the the very first one there. I think it's always served us well. And that's one, whether it's myself or Carl, or you sitting up there, but a representation of this for
Sure.
planning
Yeah.
as well as that committee. I think it's worked for us really well in the past.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
I agree.
Would you see the process being like maybe on an annual or every other year basis, you have those counselors identified that would be on that interview as opposed to just
Every single time.
every
that
single
there's a need.
time asking for volunteers, or do you want it more open?
it hasn't happened a lot of times,
Yeah.
especially for the planning commission, thank
It's just
goodness.
once this
You know,
year.
we've had, just one here recently, and we haven't had another one here, but that could change next year, right? You might have three.
Mhm.
What I've liked was the fact that it wasn't always going to the same person, right? But our schedules are all different, we have to kind of coordinate those in that timeframe too. So we don't wanna stall out, you know, cause there's been a couple times where planning is like, we need a couple to make quorum.
Mhm.
And so we can't just wait for 3 weeks for the process to go. Another counselor can obviously, other counselors could do it, so. I don't know about predetermining which counselors are for something that may or may not happen.
But we could predetermine if it's counselors though,
Yeah.
right?
Right, yeah.
So we could, I mean, in the rules, it could be an ad hoc committee is formed by the mayor consisting of 2 members of council and a member of the planning commission, or
Yeah.
it could be
Yeah.
something along those
I like
lines.
that.
Yeah.
I think there's a good sense to be able to pass it around, get experience.
Yeah.
You know, this is unusual, but I probably not be here forever, and somebody else is gonna need to know what that's all about, so.
Yep.
I want somebody else to be the oldest council here, so.
Jeremy's trying.
I'm looking.
I'm not gonna mention, people are older than me.
People. Which people?
Referring to me.
Not me.
Okay, so that's.
John was real quick to go there.
So then, what is the thoughts on, so the direction I was going on asking about, if we had records of how long everybody's been around is, do we want to place everybody into a term starting January based on seniority on their current, committee, or those would then be coming up and expiring, or, I mean, how do we wanna place these folks into terms as?
You wanna
as
maybe
it's
ask
today?
them for feedback too?
That's an option as well, yeah.
We've probably got people who've been there a long time, and some have not been there much, but I guess I would prefer to see, I think what we talked about is keeping some of the folks that've been there a while you bring in new people, and then, so you have half, or about half of the board or commission potentially replaced every couple of years. I think it says that every odd and even year that there's certain things, I don't think that works very well. I think it ought to be every couple of years if it's a 4-year, or if it's a 1 year.
Depends on how
We
long.
just try to stagger the terms and then
What
not all
terms we're talking about.
falling off at the same time.
So do we want folks to expire in January?
I think it's a good time frame. It works well with others. The other time frame would be July 1, but.
Well, I mean.
Oh, you mean like this,
Well,
like everybody expires January first?
No, I'm not saying everybody, I'm saying some people whoever's terms would be
Sure.
up, but I'm just I'm looking at the calendar. So, I mean, if it's January, we've got a January coming up, or do we wait a year and make that the first January, or do we do July? I'm just
Yeah, I don't
trying.
think we can do this January.
I think you should have a process before, so that before the term is expired, you have people stepping into that or existing, or
Yeah.
someone stepping into that versus expired, now we gotta wait a month or 2
And then
before
we're
we
scrambling. and-
get new people on board. That seems really.
You can still be on July though, I kinda like the July,
Yeah,
you
July
could do it.
1st,
Mhm.
beginning of the year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
at least it gives us time now.
Cause that's the start of a fiscal year for a lot of.
The
a lot
only
of
thing
places.
about July timeframes is no one's around during that timeframe. Stan's on the lake, you know.
True.
I mean, we even cancel some of our meetings, and then to have a process and stuff, it just seems like you can, but even like the school boards usually take that month off, or you just,
Yeah, that's
it doesn't mean that you can't do it that time, for sure.
The only other thing I'd add to that, that worries me about January is you have new mayors and new counselors in January.
That's why I-
And we don't always know who we are as mayors and counselors yet in January. We learn a lot of things change.
Well,
right?
the other thing I like about July is the fact that you're offsetting, right? You're 6 months away from the other, and so you just kinda, everything's not happening at the same time.
Isn't budget July?
Yeah, I'm looking at the terms, and there's, like, the library advisor board ends, the end of June. Planning commission's the end of December. The budget committee is June.
It's all over.
Arts commission is December.
Usually the June.
Which, that
That in
There were
itself
no
should be changed.
official end dates, so
Well,
those
that
are
kinda
just.
puts you
Oh, okay,
I
right.
can't sign the
You look at it
original,
first. I mean, it's kind of puts you right there.
stuff
Yeah.
for that.
So, yeah,
Kind of paving
you know, it could
the
be good to have that. Question though, what happens when, so we have a lot of turnover, even with on parks or others that, you know, they're there for 2, 3 months and they're off, you know, and they've been for a few more months and they're off. And then you go and, if you have the term limits there and you're saying, no, that you can't go any farther, then you lose all experience or all knowledge about that board if you have a lot of turnover in a committee. That's if you are requiring
Replacing.
people
Right.
to be removed after a certain amount of time versus just reapplying at the end of it.
Right.
I don't think we need to require people to do that.
I don't think so, but that was,
I agree with
I have
you.
some experience in this, and the art commission has been almost exactly that. It never was in existence until about a year ago, but there's a lot of stuff there that are really uncomfortable for me that I've been trying to train them, move them towards certain kinds of places. They depend too much on me. I kind of feel like I'm a daddy almost. I think there is really a strong need to be able to have some kind of continuity. But I wonder if the council liaison might be, and the staff liaison, might be a real good team there to kind of coach and find a way, especially if you got a stray member or something, make sure that they stay kind of on track and don't get into any fist fights, don't want any YouTubes and that kind of stuff.
I think staff is always a must at those meetings, right, as the guiding force of it. Because counselors may be new, obviously,
Sure.
and have any experience being on any boards or anything like that.
Or too much experience.
But it does need to be clear on that though, is when a staff member is there as part of, they're there to act as a resource.
Correct.
They're not there as an employee of the committee.
Correct.
Mhm.
Any other topics on that? So,
Yes.
Jordan, do you feel like, so we've gone through it, I know.
Jordan's like,
We've discussed the
"You've
appoint-"
answered none of my
so-
questions.
So it sounds like you wanna move
Well,
it.
we've discussed the appointment process,
Yeah,
right?
that's helpful. But I think as
And
far as,
terms.
yeah, the terms, some clarity on establishing actually term limits versus reapplying, I think is good. So we'll maintain that. But then, when do these terms for members that have been on the boards and some of these boards that just don't have the term start dates, how do we apply that? Do we say 2 years out from now, and maybe we stagger them?
So do we have information, do we have data on people who were accepted this year and then people who were accepted last year?
I have readily available this year's stuff. We could dig up last year pretty.
Yeah.
So-
We have
So
recent.
So
yeah.
and that's what I would move to. I would move to,
Yeah.
if we can dig up who was appointed last year and this year, then they're in where they're at in their term, right? So their 4-year term ends for the people last year, 2 years from now, the people this year, 3 years from now, and so on and so forth. And then everybody else, you're in your second term.
Yeah. Which will be
Ending with-
expiring in July.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. June 30th, yeah.
And not expiring
And
as
then-
in, and not
Not
expiring
as
as
in
in
you're
you're
off.
off.
No.
Expiring as in
Reapply.
reapply.
You
It's
reapply.
now open for the community to
Yep.
apply for the position.
Yes.
Not-
Yep, and
To
you
make
make
this
the
more
announcement.
complicated though, there's,
Oh, good, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thanks.
Jordan.
well, so some boards like the Library Advisory Board do track this information, and so they do have some of that. And so what we're speaking about is just
In a
for
card
the
catalog, too.
boards that
Of course.
don't,
Or
right?
the decimal
That maybe
system.
didn't have bylaws or
Right.
Yeah,
was
so we're-
established.
Then so be it.
Establish
Okay.
Yeah.
I
the
think
boards
we
that
should
don't
be
currently.
kind of flexible at this point,
I
trying
do
to
too.
figure out, just like
Yep.
for example,
Mhm.
we know last year's and this year's, we don't know it all, or
Mhm.
some of them are so old that they go before we had documentation, and we just figure it out.
Is the library board consolidated? I think it is from the Hoodland
Yeah.
board now just to one board.
It used to be
Yeah,
like
2
11.
members have
Yeah, it
to
used to
Same
be,
thing.
it used to be 11 members.
About a year and a half ago, maybe 2
Yeah.
years, we consolidated it.
Was there any other questions on the rules that you wanted? The role of a liaison or anything? Did you wanna pick at that scab tonight or wait till another time?
I have about,
I mean,
a dozen.
Yeah, 15
Yeah,
minutes.
did you wanna
Take
do
it
that
or
or
not?
not?
Just
Bring
rip
it
the
in.
Band-Aid.
I just wanna say I have about,
He's got a dozen.
Oh,
Can I
okay.
get a question
but they're
before
not
his
about the
dozen?
advisory so much, they're more about council.
And so, the planning commission makes sense, cause planning commission is a very common thing. Arts commission, in my mind, is usually associated with funding that's allocated towards the arts, and there's a commission that's working on that. So like, part of the state budget is allocated towards arts in public or arts in schools. And so we're not necessarily set up that way. Was it just a convenience of the commission piece, or does it have to be a commission? Because I think if we just call it a committee, like all the other committees, it just falls into a line that doesn't seem like it's something.
Like an
we need.
advisory board, you know?
Yeah.
It seems more like an advisory board.
You're talking art? The problem though is now they're actually a statute now, right?
Yeah.
Like we'd have to go
Yeah, we
through a whole
actually created
process
a-
to.
Well, it's an,
Yeah.
an ordinance, yeah, you've got a provision in your code that.
I don't know what makes them,
would
what are you
need
trying to do?
to
I
change.
mean, they kinda act like a committee, and really, with a few $1,000s that they play with, that they think they can.
But if I'm
spend
them,
what they wanna
I'm
do.
proposing my own darn budget next year if I'm them.
I gotta tell you, that they are looking at big dollars coming
Yeah.
in, but they're
Which I'm
gonna be
okay with.
donation
Me
dollars.
too, that's
Yeah.
what I want them
Yep.
doing.
I'm
Yeah,
okay
that's
with
the same
it.
thing
And
as
that's
what
why I
Parks
think they
did,
still, they need to
so-
maintain their.
Parks did the
commission
exact
stuff.
same thing, so I don't know what the difference between the money coming from grants and stuff for ours
Something
versus
with
Parks.
commission versus
Because
something.
they had way more, like $500,000 in a grant and,
You're talking parks?
Parks,
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, they have more money coming in the arts, the
Yeah.
past 10 years, so, but.
Yeah, I mean, what limits our parks commit, what really limits them as being a committee versus a commission to apply for grants?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah.
I don't think there's
Doesn't
any
matter.
rhyme or reason why something's called a commission or a committee. So.
For limitations in dollars, I think anybody that has the ability to find a grant someplace for something that we would like to see
Yep.
as council to happen,
Mhm.
they can go out and find the $500,000, $1 million, $2 million, whatever. I think as long as it fits within our goals.
Seemed like one had more autonomy, but David is gonna be the one that.
Yeah, I mean, to me,
Buy one.
the arts commission piece, I think it would probably be good to have the council, I don't know if we need, I'm not suggesting to do this now, but it is probably good to give a little more thought to exactly what you're hoping the arts commission would do, because when I read Title 18, this is their authority, on behalf of the city to encourage, conduct, sponsor, or co-sponsor public programs to further development and public awareness of art, recommend things to the mayor and council regarding art, encourage donation grants and other support, and then to take other actions as the city council may direct. So it seems to me that as far as like authority to do something with that money, it's about conducting or sponsoring programs to sort of further the development and public awareness of art in the
So,
community.
David, I always try to go to like worst case scenario. Okay?
Yeah.
So let's say they develop their own budget, and then they propose their own budget, it'd go to budget committee at that point, and then budget committee would approve or disapprove of that budget. If they approve of that budget, then who does it go to be ratified? Does it go to the city council, or does it go to the,
It would,
or to the commission?
it would go to the city council. That's,
So city council still has the final say over that budget?
that certainly would be my opinion, yes.
Then I don't really see what, yeah.
I'm thinking about the transportation transit department.
And they make people.
They make so much money, it's
Right.
pathetic, you know,
Yeah.
but we still have them.
He's
Andy's right behind you.
In fact,
But they really do make a lot of money. They still are in the
There's-
council.
there's a
There's a
section in
commission
that.
on getting money.
There's a section in that title that talks about, expenses shall be funded from the city of Sandy general fund, grants, donations, and admission charges. City manager shall be responsible for submitting the annual operating budget to the mayor and council. So,
So,
to me, you have the control over all that
Yeah.
through the budget process.
A lot of times those donations come with limitations too.
Oh, yeah.
My uncle died, I wanted to have green grass planted in this spot, or you don't get the money. So we gotta say yes or no to that.
So my guess is we have to have another work session to get through your 12.
Mostly these are about council.
So are we gonna have future sessions on different aspects of the rules, and then hopefully by the end of, by 2021 or whatever, we're gonna get to a point where we kind of ratify these, or do you wanna do it in stages, and as council, we're approving these in stages?
Well, one thing we could do is maybe a goal setting, talk about these. I mean, that could be something more formal too, if we do it every 2 or 4 years. It just is, part of the agenda, goal setting to review the rules and bring up any like changes that need to be made based on the last couple years' experience.
Well,
We can
and
also
best practices, right? 'Cause like when I was going through some others, I noticed there's like usage for city council for social media. There's just different things that as technology changes and
Mhm.
things percolate up, we should be adding into our rules.
Yeah, yeah. And we can also, goal setting, bring back maybe our proposed, term or, you know, term, start dates and end dates for the existing members and how to stagger those. We do need to communicate to the boards and these members that will be affected, so we'll tell the staff liaisons to, you know, talk to them and at the next meetings or whatever, and can use the counselor liaison help too, and explaining kind of what's you know, the thought is on that.
We all eventually need to sit around these tables and hash out the role of a council liaison so that we can finally get our rules done up.
Yeah, and that, the other item too that's in there that I think is, something that maybe we do this year, through another vehicle that we're already working on is, the annual meetings with the boards and commissions, so that's in the rules that you're supposed to hold, you know, these joint meetings, so that the boards and commissions can report out on what they're working on, what they accomplished, et cetera. And maybe what we do is just make sure we invite, you know, someone from the boards and commissions to come to that January 13th open house for goal setting and participate that way. It's not its own event, but at least they can come in and be at the table with counselors and talk to them over.
So let's tackle that really quick. So we have a transit board.
Mm-hmm.
We have a parks board who we've met with in the last year.
Mm-hmm.
We have a library board whom we have not met with in the last year. We have planning commission.
We kind of met with the art board, art commission.
And we've kind of met with the planning commission. They showed up.
For that training.
Yeah.
Team members.
Yeah.
And
What's
who else
the
am I
date?
missing? Any other committees?
Budget committee, you meet with them, obviously.
Yeah.
Jordan,
you
what
say
was the date
transit?
for the?
Huh?
The 13th of January.
That's a
That's
It's a holiday.
Sorry, is that,
That's MLK.
no,
January
that's the week before.
20th is a holiday.
Yeah,
The 20th is.
So the 13th, a weekday?
it's Monday night, yep.
We should.
Monday
meet
night.
Goal setting is the 18th.
That's
Okay.
the one with the public, right?
Both are with the public technically, but the 13th.
Wait, the 18th is
Saturday.
But it's a
Yep.
3-day weekend.
Yeah, is that?
Kids are off school. I won't be. We
You
have,
guys
we
leaving
have a
town?
basketball tournament.
Why don't we do the 11th?
It's
You
in the middle of a
Ryan?
3-day weekend.
Shaq broke her arm. I'm not worried about basketball. It looks like we could go.
You wanna do the 11th or the 25th?
11th. Oh, yeah.
No, the 11th, or the.
Yeah, 11th.
Of January?
I can do
1-1.
That's a Saturday.
They're all Saturday.
Yeah, for the full day retreat.
I just gotta ask permission.
Yeah, I have to check with my wife.
Okay.
But, can't do the 3-day weekend, so.
We're calling it the.
We got it good.
Oh, yeah, goal setting? Is that what-
3-day weekends would be good, cause you got the 2 other days left after Saturday. Okay.
Except,
Especially for staff.
we just,
That's fine. We can move some things around.
I'm not too, we're having ours at the fire annex. They just had theirs at Edgefield, so I'm not gonna flex with that for stuff right now.
Who had theirs at Pittsfield?
Staff did. We have ours at the fire annex. I'm just saying.
Can we
You
just
guys
have
gotta
a
meet in
we're not
town,
gonna-
sorry.
Yeah, public
You get to meet within sight of city
Public
limits.
meetings. See, we would totally get a good one.
Let's go to high school.
We should do
Let's
it.
use a high school.
They
Well,
really
I-
deserve it.
Now I gotta check to see if we can, get
As a
them.
liaison,
'Cause we were
I
getting
have a
letters.
space on their agenda. Actually, no, I don't have a space on their agenda.
I'm gonna say, that's pretty valuable.
Like,
item.
seriously, be the only human in Sandy that
Yeah,
has
the
access to
space.
their agenda. No. They
Yeah.
share their agendas and meeting minutes just freely, so.
Yeah. All right, with that, anything else for good of the order, Tori? Okay. Close work session.
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome. Tyler, will you please call the roll?
Counselor Piesel?
Here.
Counselor Smallwood?
Yes.
Counselor Hamblin?
Present.
Counselor Lee?
Here.
Counselor Exner?
Here.
Counselor Schultz?
Here.
Mayor Pulliam?
Here. Welcome. So in tonight's meeting, we'll start off with a review per usual. We will go to changes in the agenda, then we'll go to public comment. That will be opportunities for members of the public to address the council. We do have a couple of business items under new business. There's a sign variance, as well as a quasi-judicial hearing we'll be having on the Pleasant Street duplex appeal. If you are here to testify on one of those two items, that will be the time in which you will come to testify. So our public comment period will only be for items other than those two. We'll then go into a presentation, one from Steve Wise, hello, with the Sandy Watershed Council, and another a presentation from Clackamas County Soil and Water Conservation District. We'll move on to the approval of our consent agenda, and then under ordinances, we have a proposal for a rezone of the Sandy Health Clinic, and then we'll get into our new business items, which is the Sandy Operations Bus Barn construction contract, the picking sign variance, the AP Pleasant Street duplex appeal. Then we'll get into our report from the city manager, our committee and council reports, and then we will adjourn for the evening. With that, is there any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, I'll move to public comment. It's a moment for the public to give comment. Please approach the podium. Seeing none, we will move on to a presentation, Sandy Watershed Council. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Thanks for having us here. As you may recall, those of you who have been on the council for a little while, watershed councils are required as a condition of our support from the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board to report annually to our founding jurisdiction, and that is the city of Sandy. That was recognized the Sandy River Watershed Council originally in 1997. So besides the fact that we want you to be in touch with what we're doing, this is also fulfilling a requirement of the state. So it's a very important thing to basically continue our status and support with the state. So with that in mind, I'll just go straight into it. Tell you about what happened in the Sandy River Watershed world this year. It's been a very busy year, our biggest budget and our most active projects ever. So hold on to your hats. All right. So starting off in the middle of the year, we were invited to move offices, which is always a fun thing to do. We had been, since 4 years ago, we moved into our first independent office at Mount Hood Community College. That's the picture on the top there. We called it the Sandy Watershed Learning Center, which was a very good place for us to work and to work with the college and the community and do a lot of training and be sort of a hub of things. But they needed that building for the Rockwood Business Center, which is scheduled to move into the Rockwood Rising Complex when it is complete in 2 years. But in the meantime, their current office space was being leveled, and they fit right into our building with our lease expiring in July, and they let us know in April. So we got in touch with the St. Aidan's Church at 174th and Gleason. Actually, it's sort of on the border of Gresham and Portland. It's a Portland address, but it's in Rockwood, ironically. So the Rockwood Business Center went to Mount Hood, and we moved to Rockwood. So now we are in the Lukowski Hall there on the back of St. Aidan's Church, next to Nadaka Nature Park. It's our new base of operations, and that's, if you need to find us, stop in and see us at 174th and Gleason these days. So we're all moved in. Slide. We've also done a lot of work this year in terms of working toward greater justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, also known as diversity, equity, inclusion, but now JEDI, because it's the force. It's a force that we have to work with. It's very important. We had a year-long cohort with the Intertwine Alliance working on our strategies for greater engagement with communities of color and groups that have less access to the work we do. We've completed now a self-assessment under the Coalition of Communities of Color to look at what we're doing in terms of our organization, our staff, working with the community, how well we reflect the community that surrounds us and that should be involved in our work, and the steps we can take toward increasing that involvement in communities that haven't been sufficiently involved proportionally to their population. We've also worked on a number of different partnerships with native tradition keepers who are instructors in our field programs at the Sandy River Delta, with a group called Vive Northwest doing restoration work and weed pullings in the Mount Hood Forest, and just multilingual signage and outreach to sort of step up our work to reach out to other communities. It's very important, and that the little pie graph is one of the things that came from our self-assessment. Do we have written procedures to address the recruitment, retention of people, promotion of people of color? What we found was that some of the things are very clear with our organization, some of the things are confused, that people have different impressions of what we are and aren't doing, and some of the things we just don't know what's going on. So there's different levels of things, and we're working on the next steps to have a plan for improving the areas we want to improve on with partners, community engagement, their staff, and our board. So you'll hear more about this in the future, and we want to reflect our community more effectively by doing this kind of work. It's, like I said, it was our biggest year ever. We last year topped $1 million of income and expenses for the first time, and by mid-November this year we were at almost $1.8 million in income and $1.6 million in expenses, which is substantial and reflects the large projects that we have done this year that I'll talk more about in a little bit. And we had the largest staff we've ever had on board, with 6 people and a couple of interns. We had a summer intern from the Patagonia company. So it was a very active year, very dynamic, very challenging that we were moving offices with the biggest staff, the biggest budget and all that. But we are still standing and still intact, and looking like it'll actually go, that the budget will go higher than that. Next slide, please. This is sort of another look at where the income and expenses have been throughout the year. A lot of it happening in the summer during the construction season. So you see those peaks in the July to September period. That's when our big restoration and retrofit project, Mount Hood Community College, were going at the same time. So that was kind of the peak of our work. And then the next slide shows what we expected to be at the end of the year. Depending how the timing of these reimbursements come in for grants that we have and expenditures that we've made up until now, we expect to be north of $2 million, possibly close to 2.3 or $2.4 million, depends on the time. But that's, like I say, twice what we've ever done before, and that was twice last year's peak, which was much more than we've ever done before. So it was an interesting year to sort of scale up to this size in our efforts, in our organization, our management. We found the weaknesses in our own systems, and we're working on improving that so that we can keep this sort of pace of ambitious work going forward in the future years. But it was a very big year financially and in terms of action. Looking at the trend, just to give you a sense of what this was compared to 5 years ago, for example, we were hovering around $500,000 for a while. We started pushing past $500,000 in 2016 and 2017, and then again last year and this year we've sort of crossed new thresholds. So it's an interesting thing to work on that growth and see how well we can sustain it, see how many of these large projects we can keep doing, and maintaining those partnerships and the grant funding to get these projects done. We had some very good luck with a national funder on one project in particular that gave us the chance to do effectively 2 years' work in 1 year. So that's part of that growth pattern. But to say last year was about $1 million, this year is north of 2. That's where we're at. We had a benefit event this year. Again, part of the idea of reaching out to our community in new ways and reconnecting to the river, just helping people realize what's going on in Sandy and all of this activity. We presented a couple of awards, including the state legislature passed a resolution recognizing our Mount Hood Community College project, the retrofit to the parking lots there, and the sustainable stormwater as an outstanding collaboration. So that was very exciting. We had 71 guests and a very nice time at the Migration Brew Pub, part of the Oregon Brewshed Alliance, proving that good beer starts with clean water, a lot of it is Sandy. Next slide, please. So this was our biggest project. We worked on a mile-long section of the Sandy River floodplain, and actually punched through some levees up there. The story on the Sandy was that after the 1964 flood, the Corps of Engineers, in our wisdom of the time, tried to block off the river where it was and build these levees, miles and miles of levees across the banks of the river, which is absolutely the wrong thing for habitat. So when we say reconnecting this floodplain, it was breaking through the levee in two different places, building some huge log jams, reconnecting the channels, and thus churning through thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of yards of river material that we had to replace either in these log jams in the riverbed, or, as it turned out, exporting it from the site. And that could be a very challenging and costly endeavor because hauling off rock is expensive. And so originally we had designed it to be part of the structures, but we still had excess material, and I'll tell you how we got rid of it soon. But the other thing that happened was that Representative Earl Blumenauer's office called and said, well, we're gonna be in the neighborhood, would you like to show us something? We said, wow, would we like to show you something? That's great. So he came down on August 5th. Councilman Exner was there among our county commissioners and Watershed Council board members and staff and so forth, and had a really good discussion about the challenges of doing river restoration and this idea of what do you do with original river material that was pushed up into levees in 1964 and is very expensive to move. So we're still in a conversation. He said, well, what can I do to help? He said, you can help us sort of work through the regulations of recognizing that this is river material and the river material should stay in the river, essentially. When the Marmot Dam was removed, 1 million cubic yards of material was set loose and flushed by the river in a moderate storm. And this was 30 to 40,000 yards of material, which is huge, but sort of a drop in the dust bucket of the river's capacity. But we're not allowed by the regulations to leave it behind, even though it came from the river. So we're still working through that with the congressman. But it's an interesting opportunity to address an issue that can be very helpful to other projects in the future, possibly to other watersheds, councils, and other restoration projects throughout the region to be more efficient and spend less money putting rocks in trucks than redistributing it in the floodplain where it belongs, where it came from, and could be flushed out by the river. So the next slide, this shows what we did. About 35,000 yards of rock that had to be removed from the site. We placed over 650 logs into a bunch of big log jams that we actually found on Craigslist. This was remarkable. The lesson learned, we've always scrambled to find large logs that are 40 to 50 feet long with their root wads attached, which are essential to build these log jams. And one day one of our council members said, hey, listen, I saw this ad on Craigslist. They're selling root wad trees for restoration. And I called them up. They said, oh, how many do you need? It's like 700. They said, fine. I said, seriously? Just logs on Craigslist. And so we put it out on Craigslist that we had clean river rock sorted, because we had a big sorting machine that would grade it out into boulders, gravel, cobble, and so forth. And once it was sorted, we had a huge mountain of sand. You can see some of the material there, but that's just a tiny bit of it. Extra loaders and trucks, and we call them the haulers of fame, because these companies and ODOT and Clackamas County came with their trucks. The material was sufficiently sorted and of high quality that they took it off for free. So we paid nothing for the hauling, but we did that sort of an exchange. And so your roads will be safer this year because they're using sand from this project as an ODOT sand distribution on the roads. Some of the project material went into a restoration project in Johnson Creek that was being done by the Johnson Creek Watershed Council, so they saved money getting free material from our project. And Britain Excavating, which was our contractor on the Mounted Community College retrofit, came up with some trucks, took some gravel down to the project in Gresham, and used it in our bioswales as some of the drainage material and structural material. So we established some really nice patterns of reuse, and the idea that, well, if you take this material, sort it out, and get the word out to contractors in a timely way, people may come and help us out voluntarily, and again, keeping the cost of these expensive operations down. This project was supposed to be a 2 to 3 year project, but we received funding from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation's National Coastal Resilience Fund, which is beautiful for a number of reasons. I've been arguing for years that the Sandy, as an undammed tributary of the Columbia, is a coastal resource. So we can say that we are national, we are coastal, we are resilient, because this is adding to community resiliency, helping protect infrastructure from erosion and flooding, at the same time as it's creating new habitat. And this weekend, I know we don't usually pray for big storms, but we're waiting for a big storm to fill up the river enough that the water will actually enter this new habitat and these restored channels. So we're looking forward to the river rising to a level of winter flow that will actually turn this into habitat. We've had some skepticism from neighbors. If you read the Mountain Times, one of the people across the river said, "There will never be water in that channel." Believe me, there will be water in that channel pretty soon. It might happen this weekend. So if you haven't seen it, it's pretty, the scale of it is magnificent and impressive, but it'll be more impressive when it's actually full of water, hopefully maybe this weekend. The other project I keep mentioning is our Mount Hood Community College MHCC retrofit. And this is a project that was designed to help the college gain salmon safe certification as managing its landscape in a way that is supportive of habitat and water quality. We completed the second phase of work this summer. It is now diverting 4 million gallons of annual runoff approximately into bioswales, rain gardens, and so forth. We have plants going into the new bioswales this year, and that it's hard to see the sign there in the upper right corner there, but we put in signs that are, say, reserved for salmon in 4 languages. It's English, Spanish, Russian, because those are the 3 major languages of people, residents in the neighborhood. But we also put Chinook Wawa. We worked with the Grand Ronde tribes to get the translations of the Chinook language so that we could recognize that, again, as a tribute to the diversity and the native heritage and the presence of native people since time immemorial, that this was all native land, that it's still native land, and that it's very important to the tribes, the work that we're doing to restore habitat. The other thing that's important there, the gentleman in the purple shirt on the bottom right picture, third from the left, is named Charles George. He's the facilities director at the college. Again, it's his second term there, and he was there for the beginning of this project, but he left for 2 years. And when he left, it was kind of a little bit dicey for a while. The college wasn't sure if they were committed to the project, but now that he came back as the project founder, we have 22 more projects to do in the list of opportunities we found on campus, and he stepped up the first week he was back and said, "I will be a champion. We're going to move forward with this project." And it's really great to have that support, have the first project done, and show what can be done at a significant scale to retrofit existing facilities. It's relatively easy to do these things on new buildings, but it's much harder and more complicated to do it when something was built in 1960 and it has 50% impervious area in all its parking lots and buildings. So we're very excited about this one. And both of these projects were going on at the same time, which again is what spiked our budget and our activity and some people's pulse rates, I guess. So nice one. The other thing that happened as a part of the Mount Hood study was that the Salmon Safe program recognized that the single most effective action that we could do on the campus was to consider removing the dam that creates the pond and that is used as a walkway from the south end of campus, the athletic side, to the main campus. It was supposed to be a suspension bridge in the college's original master plan, but that was expensive. So we took construction fill from the buildings, built a dam and a causeway and a walkway, and that's what we have now. But what we learned from this feasibility study is that in about 2 years, with about $3 million of investment, we can get from what's there now, which is a hot heat sink that raises temperatures from 4 degrees from when the Kelly Creek, that's the tributary there, coming in to when it goes out the end of the pond, 4 degrees Celsius. The temperature gets raised in the summertime. Sometimes the level's lethal to salmon. It's a great opportunity, and we have a working sponsor in the Resources Legacy Fund that is interested in pursuing this. And we got into the Nature for All Metro Bond language that capital projects can include improvement of passage up to and including dam removal. So it is an eligible project for Metro support, and between Metro support and the current funder that's willing to go with us on this, we think this is a fairly realistic possibility. The challenge will be that the college is underfunded. They've had a perennial struggle to get capital bond funding, and they're going into a planning cycle for the next 10 years of capital development. So we're going to be working with the college in the next year to try to make sure that these projects are viewed as compatible with their capital development plan, and that it will, as you can see in the picture on the right, create a potentially beautiful asset of a restored creek where this sort of stinky hot pond is now. And it would include a bridge, not quite as fancy as the suspension bridge in the original plan, but still a graceful bridge that can be a signature element of the campus and be a real community asset while restoring this river. So we're hopeful that we can move forward with that, but the college has got to consider how it fits their plans in the long run. Other activities that we do on an annual basis, we do what's called an eco blitz, looking for species diversity and helping people identify the great range of plants and animals and bugs and so forth. And Smokey Bear comes out to join us there on the Sandy River Delta. We had almost 100 people and I think 121 species identified this year. So it's a really exciting way to recognize what biodiversity is, and sort of the notion that the Delta is way more than a dog park. People know that it's the largest dog park in the Portland region because you can take your dog off leash, but it's really a pretty spectacular natural area in recovery. We've been doing a huge amount of restoration work there, which is the next slide, over the years. I think 1.5 million plants we put in the ground with thousands of volunteers, and then we've been doing this education program. That's one of the Native American culture keepers there on the left, working with students from local schools to recognize the cultural history and the natural history and how they fit together in places like this, and how important that is for the region to restore the areas that have been impacted, to preserve the ones that are functioning naturally for the health of people and biodiversity and even recreational dogs. We do annual cleanups every year. We call it the Timberline to Troutdale cleanup, to recognize that that's the extent of the Sandy. It comes all the way from the glaciers on Mount Hood and meets the Columbia at Troutdale. So it's one of our themes. We had more than 400 total participants in the 2 cleanups, because what used to be the Timberline cleanup at Timberline Lodge and then the Salmon River headwaters is now the all-mountain cleanup. So our partners on that project got the other resorts, so Ski Bowl, Meadows, and Government Camp, as well as Timberline involved. So instead of having 100 or so people cleaning up around Timberline, there were 400 people across the mountain collecting trash and recognizing that keeping trash out of the rivers is the first step toward having healthy rivers, and the increasingly terrible scourge of microplastics in our environment, in our rivers, in our bodies, in our animals, and things like that. The other thing that we did was we borrowed from the Clackamas River Basin Council their Stash the Trash program. This is something that they invented by putting up these mesh bags that used to be grapefruit bags or orange bags, and getting these at parks along the river. So there are 5 parks now along the Sandy that stage these bags and have instructions to encourage people to pick up the bags, stash their own trash, and recycle or get rid of it at the end, and pick up trash along the way. And again, we've had some interesting results where, for example, the lifeguards at Glen Otto Park in Troutdale said, "Oh, this has been wonderful. We see people picking up these bags and going out and picking up trash so that we can focus on life safety on the river and not do cleanups ourselves." So again, like in the way that our restoration project is making the roads safer by providing free sand to ODOT, this project is actually making the river safer for recreators, because lifeguards can do their jobs and volunteers actually say, well, I want the river to be clean. I'm going to grab one of these bags and pick up the trash myself. So it's a really nice way of extending what has been an episodic cleanup with 2 events a year into a summer-long program. And on the Clackamas River, at least, they found that having the Stash the Trash program reduced the amount of trash they were picking up in their annual cleanup by something like more than a ton. So it is effective, and it both in terms of public awareness and public participation, and actually having a cleaner river. We're kind of excited about this, and it's sort of a nutshell of what we try to do as a watershed council, that we have to engage people in activities that bring them to the river, help them recognize its value and the importance of sustaining it and restoring it and keeping it healthy, and then building on their commitment, because when they've done the planting or they've collected trash in a bag, they say, well, I want this river to be healthy, and I'm going to be part of that solution, and that is our mission. That's what we're trying to do. Another project that is near and dear to your hearts, I suspect, is the Green Infrastructure Lab that we helped organize here for the city of Sandy with Earth Economics. It was very interesting and inspiring. The gentleman who was the main presenter is a legend in the field, I can tell you. I was really excited when I didn't realize that Dave Rosine was coming. He's been a leader at the University of New Hampshire Stormwater Center up there, done some of the best research on what effective green infrastructure really can be. And the other thing that they mentioned that I think is really important to think about is that if you go with the plan that you are suggesting to have tertiary treatment of your effluent, you may be looking at not what's considered effluent in the world of wastewater treatment, but something better and more valuable called Class A recycled water. And if it is Class A recycled water, you don't need to dispose of it as waste. That's a resource. So they've offered to do some follow-up research, and we've encouraged them to look into that issue in particular. And I would encourage you to consider that if indeed what you're producing is Class A recycled water, what can you do with that? What else would you do with it besides treating it as effluent? And also continuing to look into these practices of using green infrastructure to reuse and reapply that water and create more healthy environments by using the water you have, not to necessarily just pipe it in the river. So this was a great opportunity to get some more ideas. I know the mayor was there and Carl was there for that workshop as well, so that they're a great resource and have some really good ideas about how to take these green infrastructure practices, put them in at scale, have effective policies to encourage them in your future developments. And I think this will be a really good tool for the city of Sandy. So we appreciate the cooperation that you offered in hosting this. And then this is just a summary of our outreach activity throughout the year. Last year was a huge, biggest year ever in terms of the number of volunteers and events. And we sort of caught our breath and said, wow, 101 events and 5,000 people, whew, maybe we should cut back. And it was also just a matter of the types of activities and things we were doing. But we still reached 2,500 people as of November. It'll probably be close to 3,000 people this year, and 60 or more events, including what's happened in November. So we're really still having a big impact, bringing a lot of people into these activities in a lot of different venues and a lot of different ways, so that people recognize what the Sandy River is, what a tremendous, unique, biological and cultural resource it represents for our communities, and how important it is that we work together to keep it that way. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions?
No question. I just want to again thank Steve for being able to be part of that Green Lab. That was pretty beneficial. I know there'll be some future coordinated and probably mutually helpful activities in the future between Sandy Watershed and the city of Sandy. You know, all the things that would move our sewer system and Class A or affluent, whichever you want to call it, towards the Sandy River. I look forward to cooperating with Steve and the Sandy River Watershed. Thank you.
Yeah, I just would reiterate the same. I had learned a lot, especially at the green infrastructure that you helped partner with us on. You thanked us. Thank you for really kind of spearheading, putting that together, partnering with us on that. And you know, I've been around for about a year now, and I've really appreciated the partnership with the Sandy Watershed Council and all the communication that we've had. So looking forward for more of that here in the years to come. So,
yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks. All right. So next up is
His name is Tom Salsa.
Tom Salser with Clackamas County Soil and Water Conservation District. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Before Steve leaves, I just wanted to say what a great partner the Sandy River Watershed Council has been. When they succeed, we succeed because we're a grant maker and help them with those things. So thank you.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, one of our co-sponsors for the floodplain restoration project. So.
All right.
Great.
Yeah. Thank you.
I apologize. I don't think we've been here for at least 9 years. So hello.
Welcome.
Jan Lee asked me to do a quick Clackamas Soil and Water Conservation District introduction, and it starts with, next slide please, a Soil and Water Conservation District's 101, and then some specifics about Clackamas. So next slide. We are one of 45 districts in the state. You can find Clackamas on the map. We all know where it is. We're one of the smaller districts, actually 18th out of all of them in size, so right in the middle or median. Next please. And soil and water conservation districts were formed as a result of the Dust Bowl. We remember these pictures. So we're connected very deeply in our culture to private landowners and agriculture and soil conservation. Next. Okay, lots of bullets. Oregon law created the authority for soil and water conservation districts in 1939. we formed as a local government, a special district under ORS 198. We generally represent an entire county. We have board members that are elected on the general ballot. They serve 4-year terms. We provide voluntary services in cooperation with local landowners. So private landowners who want to work with us come to us and ask for our help. The enforcement stuff we don't do. We don't write tickets. We don't turn people in. We leave that up to ODA. We're happy to let them wear that hat. Next, please. We provide, and I'm talking about districts across the state, cost share grant programs to help people pay for certain practices. We provide help, we call it technical assistance for both urban and rural projects. We help implement, we're the kind of the local door connecting people to the federal Farm Bill program. Farmland preservation is the new hot button, so working lands, farms, fields, and forests, you'll hear that again coming up. Some of us, including Clackamas, participate a lot in invasive species issues. We actually function as the de facto county weed board in Clackamas. We also work with energy efficiency. That's a newer one from the federal side that came to us. Tide gates, you probably don't deal with tide gates here. They do in other parts of the state. Culverts, I have pictures of culverts, and we do a lot of irrigation pipelines. I left erosion control last because it really comes first. We're trying to keep soil out of the rivers and streams. Pesticides are often attached to those soils, so when we control soil, we control pollution. We also, this is part 2 of services, there are loan programs in some districts. Clackamas has the only countywide septic system repair loan program in the state. Forest health, wildfire planning, there were just a bunch of those done up here this year. Livestock and nutrient management, there's lots of things under this. Essentially, if it poops, we help control that issue and keep it out of the water. I mentioned pipelines. We do a lot with irrigation efficiency because the less water we withdraw, the less water we use, the less runs off. We help people with permits, engineering and contracting, and we are one of the parties that help implement Oregon's Water Quality Management Plan. We are a taxing district. We have authority under ORS 568, one of 13 that actually taxes our local citizens. Our tax rate is capped at 5 cents per $1,000 of valuation. And those are the districts in light green that are the actual tax assessing districts. Next, please. We work with a lot of partners. You saw Steve, he's at the bottom there under NGOs. Federal side, FSA, NRCS, Forest Service, BLM, state, primarily Oregon Department of Agriculture and OWEB, and lots of local governments, cities, counties, hamlets, etc., and non-governmental organizations as well. We partner a lot. We have a formal partnership between the Coalition of Oregon Land Trusts, the Network of Oregon Watershed Councils, OCEAN, which is the Oregon Conservation Education and Networking and Assistance Network, and then the Oregon Association of Conservation Districts. All 4 formally form the OCP, or Oregon Conservation Partnership. We're almost done with the general stuff. We're part of a very significant partnership, and I mentioned pesticides. This is the Oregon Pesticide Stewardship Partnerships. Clackamas River Watershed in its entirety is part of that partnership, and we have prevented through our work tens of thousands of pounds of legacy pesticides from being used or accidentally released into the environment. Next, please. Part 2. I didn't have a picture of our board, so that's a picture of our staff. Next, please. A lot of numbers coming at you. 400,000 people in the district, which is the same as Clackamas County, nearly 1,900 square miles. We have 7 elected directors, 17 staff. Our property tax revenue annually is at a little more than $2.4 million and climbing. We have, funny enough, in Clackamas County, the most farms of any county in the state, the smallest average farm size of any county in the state, and the most women-owned or operated farms in Oregon. So it's a fairly unique niche that we fill in the landscape of farms in Oregon. We're number 1 in production of Christmas trees, poultry and eggs, hogs and pigs, and horses. To simplify, we think of our priority areas as the 5 W's: water, weeds, wildlife, working lands, and worms. I hope you get a smile from that. WORM stands for healthy soil, so we deal with water quality, water quantity, invasive species, which I mentioned. Wildlife, you're gonna see a Fish and Wildlife Habitat Project, actually 2 coming, and working lands, again, the farms, fields, and forests that are productive and important for our environment. Next, please. Our specific programs focus on repair and restoration of fish passage, example coming, invasive species management, example coming, TA, technical assistance to landowners, the financial assistance to landowners. I mentioned our septic system repair program, which the Board of Directors recently expanded to countywide at a 0% interest rate. So if you are having a problem, and a lot of our low-income folks do, finding the money to repair a failing septic system where some of that material makes it into surface water, we are happy to help you with that. Partner support, I said hello to Steve. Steve is a great partner. We actually have 10 watershed councils in Clackamas, more than any other district in the state. We're very special. And so we try to serve as a grant maker to those watershed councils, not a grant taker. We try not to compete with them and instead support them. They're our eyes and ears on the ground getting things done. We also support our locals farmers markets to the tune this last year of $32,000 provided to 8 farmers markets to help them keep their doors open, keep farmers out there providing good, healthy food. And working lands, easements, and acquisitions, example coming. Next, please. A couple more numbers, then there'll be pictures. Last fiscal year, nearly 1,700 customer contacts from our conservation side of the house, 200 site visits on the weed side of the house, I should say weed-wise invasive species. Now that it's legalized, we can't say weed anymore. 1,000 households mailed, surveyed in person 200 properties. We track hundreds of different species, treated 390 sites, including 51 under the NPDES permit that we hold, and we're the only district in the state, conservation district in the state, that has authority to apply herbicides over water. Pictures. So these are about 7 years ago, a before and after picture. Our board of directors in the left-hand side are standing on the bank of Milk Creek, a fish-bearing tributary to Milk Creek, to the Malala River, sorry. And you can see that the bank is eroding. There's a bridge just upstream outside of the picture that's just forcing the water, shooting it like a cannon, right at that bank with a house and a septic drain field, et cetera, several feet away from where they're standing under threat. So we actually rebuilt 330 feet of stream bank with an engineered log jam that consisted of deconstructing the entire bank, setting it off to the side, putting the engineered log jams in, and then refilling it and replanting it. Today you can't see that bank because it's entirely vegetated, it looks entirely natural, very fish friendly, and the landowner is delighted that they're no longer losing 20 to 30 feet of bank a year into the stream. Next, please. This one is from this year. It's a little hard to see on the left-hand side. This is a tributary to Clear Creek, again a fish-bearing stream. But that culvert was put in about 55 years ago. Where the people are standing up there is a narrow little track 8 feet wide that the local farmer was driving her cattle truck across several times a season to move her cows from one side of this little valley to the other for grazing. The culvert had collapsed. That lens of soil that they were sitting on, it was in danger of actually blowing out into the stream, damaging fish habitat. And actually, a lot of it actually has been lost. Those of you that have seen a lot of erosion can recognize that shape. So after this year, we replaced the old culvert with a squashed pipe arch culvert, rebuilt the lens, compacted it. That road over the top now is 12 feet wide. This is just before they did all the revegetation, and I don't know if you noticed the black pipe coming down, but that actually takes road runoff instead of running it down the sides of that road, that lens, where it'll eventually erode and cause failure. It's all piped down to the stream now to avoid that. Next slide shows the pictures. The pipe arch culvert was very large, big enough to drive a skid steer through, and the finished product is a very fish-friendly, natural bed, normal gradient stream underneath that big lens of fill, and the landowner could not be happier. This was a mix of taxpayer funds, grant funds, and landowner funds contributed to complete this particular project. Next, please. On the invasive species side, I'm happy to report a major success. That is orange hawkweed on the left. It is a lovely little plant. It is highly invasive. We find it in people's gardens. We found it at our previous office in Oregon City, half a block away, growing in flower pots on a windowsill. It was infesting the Lolo Pass area, and we think the spread was due to vehicles and maintenance equipment underneath the power lines. We've been working on that several years. This year we have officially eradicated orange hawkweed from Lolo Pass, so for us that's a major win. Next, please. We also rent equipment. Love the name of this one. This is our 7-foot wide no-till drill. The brand name is Pasture Pleaser, designed to protect water and improve soil because you can plant seeds without really tearing the soil up or plowing it up. We rented equipment 23 times last year, our no-till drill, our manure spreader, so people can use the manure instead of dump it someplace, and an aerator to improve soil tilth. Working lands are our long-term investment strategy. This is relatively new to us. Most of our practices are short in duration, 10, 15, 20 years. The working land strategy is more permanent. We work with landowners and partner with other districts to provide workshops to landowners to learn how to do succession planning and pass their land off, keep it in one piece. We hold a conservation easement, example coming. We acquired a working forest, example coming, and we partner with other organizations like Steve's and Land Trusts. So the first example of a working lands easement is down near Camp Adams between Molalla and Colton. It's 181 acres of a working forest owned by a church camp. They received funding to compensate them for the loss of value in timber harvest in return for greatly reducing the timber harvest. They've sold their development rights to that. There's development all the way around it, so that's permanently a green space. Next, please. The district, I'm proud to report this year, closed on the purchase of 319 acres of half square mile of working forest near Estacada. That's the blue spot is Eagle Fern Park up there on the right-hand side. The orange block is the district's new property. Used to be owned by Weyerhaeuser. The same block is shown to the left in the Google map image outlined in white. So we're very excited about that. Protects that property. There's some great fish runs through there, and it's a perpetual revenue source in the future for the district. Next slide, please. And this is a video that I'd like to talk over if it plays. This is always chancy on a laptop. We have almost completed construction of our new permanent headquarters facility located 5 miles outside of Oregon City. This is drone footage taken December 3rd, showing the building, showing it's on a 15-acre farm site, circular drive, ADA. It's built on a slab, stick-built, shingled roof, 21.5 kilowatt hours of solar panels, open plaza in the back where we can extend our 30 by 50 meeting space and conference room out into that space during good weather. This is the wing with the kitchen, etc. You'll see off to the left disappearing. It's a 100-plus-year-old barn that we've preserved. It's not quite done. We're having a couple of issues. It's supposed to be done in September. Looks like December 31st is the actual here are your keys date, but we've moved in. We're occupying the facility now. A little bit closer look at that open plaza area where we can have tabling events and barbecues and really enjoy that space away from the noise of Beaver Creek Road that you see in the background up there. All those boulders were salvaged from the site. We uncovered them during construction, which was a major surprise. So we made lemonade, figured out how to use them on site. And I think that's about it. We circle around and fly up in the sky, and as it disappears, you might see Mount Hood in the upper left corner. And that is my presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Questions? No. Thank you for coming. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, that was the rapid fire version because I know you're pressed for time.
One question.
Yes.
You said there was some help from Clackamas storm drain, and I didn't catch the last part of that. can help cities maybe in terms of their
We
work?
generally, that's a lovely question, thank you. No. We
Okay.
generally don't try to assist municipalities on septic system issues. Most of the places are sewer, not all.
Mhm.
But if it's a private landowner inside a city boundary who's not connected to sewer, yeah, we will help them.
Okay.
And happy to do so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, really appreciate it.
All right,
Thank you. All right, with that, we'll move on to our consent agenda. Looking for a motion to adopt it.
I'll move to adopt the consent agenda.
Second.
It's a motion by Counselor Schultz, a second by Counselor Lee that we adopt our consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I abstain.
Oh, yes, you were
I was not
absent
there.
at that last meeting. Moving on to ordinances, for the Sandy Health Clinic, rezone. I see you moving around. Must be you, David.
I just wanted to let you know, you'll read your quasi judicial script, for this one.
Oh,
I know. It's not obvious, but.
well then. All right, so, there's a time limit, and that's begin now. Okay, so 15 minutes for applicant, presentation, then there'll be 5 minutes for each proponent or opponent, 5 minutes for applicant's rebuttal, and then 5 minutes of questions from the audience. I will now open this public hearing for the application 19-032 for ZC Sandy Health Clinic rezone. Any abstentions from the hearing body? Conflicts of interest from the hearing body?
Just for note, I don't believe it makes any, a conflict of interest, but I did help this, and it was one of the things that I received a commission on about 3 months ago to move this building forward, so
Okay.
I know it intimately.
And then any ex parte contact? I was notified at a C4 meeting by the chair of Clackamas County Commissioners that the county was looking to be a part of this, maybe, but that's about it, so, okay?
Then I probably have to say the same thing
Right.
at the same meeting.
Right. So with that, I will call for challenges to any individual members. All right, and now I must read the following statements. If you testify, you must raise all issues at this hearing. Your comments should state why the application should or should not be approved, or include in your proposed modifications you believe are necessary for approval according to the standards. If you do not raise specific issues at the final evidentiary hearing or by the close of the record, or fail to provide statements or evidence to allow the local governments or its designee to respond to the issue, you will not be able to appeal the decision to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that particular issue. Failure of the applicants to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity, always hate that word, to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Any party has the right to request a continuance of the public hearing, or in the alternative, to have the record remain open. Staff report time. Kelly, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. So, pardon me if I'm not feeling good actually, so.
Well, this
I
will
have
be a good
3 items
evening
tonight.
for you.
Yeah, my son was puking all weekend and didn't get a lot of sleep, and I think I might be coming down with it, so I'll stay my distance.
Fine, yeah.
Hey, David, you wanna come sit over there?
So yeah, tonight, the first of the 3 things I'll be presenting is a zone change. It's where the old Oregon Wild Harvest site was, just to the east of Tenike Road. I think there used to be like a car dealership in here at one point with Corvettes and stuff parked out in the front little showroom that was converted into an office space. So it's just north of the Red Shed, just south of that vacant lot, and just east of 7-Eleven.
Just in video too, right?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Remember them all.
Next slide.
Snowmobile club or a snowmobile.
That's right, there
video
was for
thing in
sure.
there.
Yeah, the Arctic Cat.
Yeah.
Thank you. The applicant's requesting a zone change from general commercial, which is our C2 zone, to the central business district, which is the C1 zone. Since it would be commercial to commercial, there's no need for a comprehensive plan map change, it's just a zone map change. And the applicant's long-term goal is to renovate the existing site and building for use as a medical clinic, which I'm sure Mr. Kelly will explain in more detail. And it would be an outright permitted use in the C1 zone as well as the C2. He could go into a little bit further, I'm sure, but I think some of the main goals they're looking to do is you get parking reductions being in the C1 zoning district, and you also get 0-foot setback requirements instead of 20 feet it would be to 10 Ike and to the highway. So it just allows for a more dense, more robust building site, essentially. Next slide. As you can see, the site has C1 all to the west, and then C2 to the south, and R2, I believe it is, to the north of Pleasant Street there. So it'd be, staff feels a logical extension of the C1 zoning district. I don't know if the C1 zoning district's been expanded before. I kind of looked back about 22, 26 years, couldn't find any expansions. But that's not to say that we can't expand it as we find appropriate properties to do so. Next slide, please.
So, I'm sorry, so like Johnson RV would be considered what zoning
C1.
district? Oh, they are C1,
Yeah, they
so
are
we're
C1.
going, okay.
Yeah.
Wait, Johnson.
Oh, I'm sorry, not
No,
Johnson
no,
RV.
Johnson RV is.
Johnson RV is C2.
Okay.
What's the other dealership? I'm forgetting the name.
Fun Time.
Fun
Fun
Time.
Time, that would be C1.
Okay.
So yeah, everything east of Ten Ike and Wolf Drive is C2 along the highway. Anything that is zoned commercial.
The couplet to couplet is C.
Correct, exactly. Couplet to couplet. And then there's some C2 on, what is it, or C1 on Hood Street across the street from Cedar Ridge Middle School.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the analysis of the proposal, I'll just keep this pretty simple. It's unlikely to have a negative impact on city services and facilities. It's consistent with the zoning district amendment chapter. It maintains sound, stable, and desirable development, permits changes in zoning district boundaries where appropriate, and ensures zoning changes are consistent with the comp plan policies and goals. As I said, it's consistent with the comp plan, statewide planning goals, and other applicable policies and standards adopted by city council. So we find it that it meets basically all of the code analysis. Last slide. So the recommendation, staff brought this to Planning Commission in November. They recommended the city council approve the zone change. They recommended the approval by a vote of 6-0. So it's pretty resounding. And that's pretty much it.
All right. Oh yeah, I'm still on this. Great. I will call for the applicant's presentation. That's you, yeah. Hello.
Good evening, Mayor. I did not sign in outside.
That's okay.
I wasn't sure about that.
Yeah.
There's a sign-in sheet here. I'll make sure that I sign in outside. My name is Steve Kelly, and I work for Clackamas County. I'm here representing the health clinic office. I typically work in community development, and basically we've worked closely with the architect that we've gone out through an RFP process and hired an architect, Ankin Moisen. They happen to be in downtown Portland. We had roughly 8 different architects that submitted proposals to work with us to move forward once we had purchased the property several months ago. So in recent few weeks, we've worked with them on developing the footprint, looking at options to keep the existing building footprint in terms of the main structure that's concrete. But recently, we talked with an engineer and looked at just demolishing the existing building because there was a substantial cost in regards to reinforcing the footings that are there that are from the existing square building, which is a little more east from that direct corner. So there'd be some demolition costs involved there, but making the building, it made sense to make the building completely safe and structurally sound, which makes complete sense. We would not want to use something that would cause a problem in the future. Just didn't make sense at all. So currently, we would like to move forward. The county's definitely invested and would like to make everything happen in terms of its aesthetics, in terms of the requirements of the aesthetics that are along the 26 highway adjacent to the police department, and make sure that we adhere to anything needed, required to move forward with the city of Sandy to be a great partner. Oh, I needed to add one more thing. Yes. I was here November, and I had gotten a verbal commitment from Emmanuel Church stating that they would allow for a 7-year lease of 17 parking spaces of their 21 lot of spaces, which is just south of their church across the street, which is at the dead end on the east end of the property. And with that, I needed to be clear that that parking is for the people that work in the clinic only. It is not for customers. I wanted to make sure I said that. And if there's any signage that would need to be done, any restriping, any possible trash collection, the county would make sure that we will be great members and will be great partners with them. We absolutely will make sure that we take care of them.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Any questions? Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm gonna now call for any opponent testimony. Seeing none, any additional questions? Staff recap.
Yeah, so the only thing I just want to clarify real fast, is that we are actually having a pre-app with them on Wednesday regarding the building design and the site design and everything, so that'll be forthcoming. If you do approve the ordinance tonight, especially with the second reading, I think it would be effective 30 days, and we'll just make that clear in the notes when we send them over to them. So if they apply before then, they'd be under different, they would just want to wait the 30 days before applying until this zone is effective. Or they would be under different setbacks and parking requirements than would be applicable in 30 days, so.
Okay. Any rebuttal? Didn't think so. Okay, now I'm looking for a motion to close the public hearing.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second it.
I have a motion by Counselor Smollett, a second by Counselor Peatsold, that we close the public hearing. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, discussion from the hearing body.
Yeah, I have no problem. In fact, when we took some of the C1 zone here a year or two ago, just what was that, south of the Church of Christ, and changed that into high residential. Me personally, when in communicating with the rest of the council, that I mentioned, you don't really get C1 back because it's such a small zone and it just gets eaten away. And as you said, in 20-some years, we've never seen that. And well, I was wrong, and if someone's wanting to be in C1, right? Like, but the point is that, you know, my point back then was we need to protect that C1 because if we just keep eating away at it. So I feel really positive of that. We have an applicant that's come in and wanted to add to the C1 in a natural manner next to it as it is. So I think it's in a great location for C1 to be in. So.
Yeah, I agree. Others?
I'm completely in favor of this one, for all kinds of reasons, but just sticking it with the C1 designation, I think it just makes a lot of sense right there. It's a busy intersection. There's a lot of commercial potential there. I just think this is a very compatible piece of work that I look forward to seeing the new building. I'm glad to hear that. It's great to see that. Anyway.
All right, I'm looking for a motion.
I would so move that we adopt ordinance 2019-24.
And first and second reading.
Yeah, just the call for the first reading, we'll do that.
The first reading as part of the motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, Counselor Lee calls for the first reading, second by Counselor Smallwood. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Do they need to read it though?
Yeah, you gonna read it? Sorry.
Prior to voting.
Ordinance 2019-24, an ordinance amending the City of Sandy zoning map by changing the zoning map designation for .47 acres.
Motion to approve the first reading.
Second.
Motion by Counselor Hamlin, second by Counselor Smallwood to approve the first reading. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I'd like to call for a second reading.
You can,
Second.
that's sufficient, you don't need
Okay.
to move on
I
that.
need-
Okay.
Great.
So, we go to a vote
wait.
now?
No, we
We
didn't
get a
have-
second
We'll
reading by
read it
title
now, and
only.
then you
Title
can,
only.
then you can vote. Ordinance number 2019-24, an ordinance amending the City of Sandy zoning map by changing the zoning map designation for .47 acres.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
We have a motion and a second.
Well, wasn't that what his motion just
No,
was?
I
You did the
called for
first
a
one.
second reading, and then they read it, and then
And then
make
you
a
gotta
motion
adopt,
to
all right, who
approve.
wants to adopt it?
So make a motion to approve the second reading.
I'll second that.
All right, we got a motion, Counselor Hamlin, second by Counselor Peatzel to adopt the second reading. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is carried. Moving on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's all good.
All right, so is this gonna be quasi judicial as well?
The bus barn construction contract is not, nor is your second one the sign variance. The last one will be.
Okay, thank you. Hey, Andy.
Hi, good evening,
Good
and
evening.
thank you. I am thrilled to be in front of you tonight with an update to the Sandy Operations Center bus barn project. If you look at page 159 in your packet, it will give you a better idea of the project. As you know, the Operations Center on Champion Way is an administration building, and then Transit has one current bus barn, which is the bus barn that you see in the left with the garage doors on page 159. In the original plan for Transit, part of phase 2 was to add 2 additional bus barns. They, at the time, were not planned to have garage doors, but as you can see in this picture, we have gone ahead and prepared them for garage doors in the event that we can afford them in the future. We did an invitation for bid, opened in November and closed December 4th, and received 8 bids, which we were very happy about. The lowest bid was from Columbia Cascade Construction, Inc., which is the company that just did the siding and paint of this building at City Hall. The bids, we actually had in the budget, so I'm gonna back up, sorry, for just a second and say that the grant process for this project, the grant application went in 2013, and it was part of the STIP, the Statewide Transportation Improvement Program, which you're very familiar with because Mike has been here. It's the same program where the sidewalks were awarded.
We got awarded at the same time, both
Same
of those
time.
projects.
Yeah. So, as you can imagine, these projects were announced in 2014, so construction costs have increased significantly since 2014. We did anticipate that, so although the project was set for $570,000 in 2014, we did put $810,000 in the transit budget to cover the projects. The lowest bid came in at $827,009. So we will not currently be putting garage doors on these bus barns. However, we do have several projects in the transit budget, so we do have room, one, to negotiate with the bid winner and see if there are any ways that we could bring that cost down. And two, also, there's another capital project that we could downsize some or move part of to the next biennium so that we are still within our budget. So I come to you tonight with the recommendation that you approve the city manager to negotiate and sign the contract with Columbia Cascade Construction for the construction of the 2 new bus barns at the Operations Center.
All right. Good work. Thank you. Yeah, good planning on this from the very beginning. So.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Julie Stevens was the grant applicant and mastermind behind it.
Yeah, it's great.
Well planned.
All right. Is there a motion to
Make a motion that we approve the city manager to negotiate and sign a contract with Columbia Cascade Construction for the construction of 2 new bus barns at the Sandy Operations Center.
Second?
A motion by Counselor Peatzold, a second by Counselor Lee that we adopt. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks,
And
Andy.
thank you, Andy. All right, moving on to our next item, picking sign variance. Kelly O'Neill, welcome again. Hope you're feeling better from the last time.
Actually, I'm feeling a little better.
Yeah,
That's why.
there you go.
I just need to move around a little.
Yeah.
So I'll just jump right into this one. So the request is by Mr. Picking, who owns the property right across the street. This property is the larger property with the large parking lot. That way, just north of City Hall, that has Mountain Mocha, Mountain Pet Resort, Thrive Fitness, and I think it's Ascent Physical Therapy. As you'll see on this overhead shot, that's the property, and that red circle or blob, whatever you wanna call it, is where the sign used to exist. And, next slide, please. This is the freestanding sign. It had Mountain Pet Resort on it, and then it looks like it had like an old area for either, I don't remember if it was a reader board or just another area to put another panel. But anyways, it had been a black area for a long time. And this sign was an existing non-conforming sign, but it was fine because it was put in long before a lot of applicable code standards. Next slide, please. On February 5th, one of my coworkers sent me this, so I had it in the archives. A truck that was parked up by the Arco, I guess the parking brake or something happened, and it rolled down and smashed into the sign, both totaling the semi and the sign. And so since I think the 6th or 7th, since Mr. Picking had the sign removed, there's been no freestanding sign at the site. It's just been wall signs for the 4 businesses in there. Next slide. So as I said, Mr. Picking has requested a sign variance to section 1520220A. Specifically in that sign section, it says that backlit, which is internally illuminated signs, are prohibited in the C1 zoning district. Mr. Picking did some analysis. I didn't confirm this analysis, but I have no reason not to believe it. It sounds pretty accurate to me. That the C1 zoning district has over 100 illuminated signs. He didn't go into how many of them are internally illuminated, but I do know just from walking around and living in town for 9 years now that there is a bunch of them that are still internally illuminated, and there's a bunch of them that are being used actively. So he would basically like that code criteria to be waived and allow for an internal illuminated sign at this location. He would also like City Council to discuss the current prohibition on new backlit signs in the C1 zoning district. Just as you know, we've been looking at sign code changes for about a little over a year now, and I'm hoping to bring those to you in the first half of 2020. So if you decide tonight that you want to explore this further, as Mr. Picking has pointed out, I would just like you to give staff direction, and then when we bring the sign code changes to you, we would incorporate that in there if that's what you choose. Next slide. So the sign is pretty aesthetically pleasing. I'd say it's a big upgrade over what the sign looked like that was hit by the semi. It will be eternally illuminated, but the panels will be dark panels with white lettering or light lettering. It will also have the 3-foot stone base, which is required by the design section within the code. It is pretty large. It's 17 feet tall, as you'll see on the schematic, and about 9 feet wide. So it is a pretty big sign. It is pretty aesthetically pleasing. I'm just trying to stay neutral on this. I don't really have a big preference one way or the other. I think it's really just it's in the eye of the beholder. It's a purely aesthetic thing as far as sign code goes. I don't think there's any right or wrong answer. So right now, what we have allowed is if you have an existing eternally illuminated sign that council, and before that the sign variance committee allowed new panels to go in there as long as they were dark out in the staff report, there was a request by Miss Kristen Turner, I think it was in 2017, as some of you will remember, with the Little Cubs preschool right up the road here, and she had put in a white sign, a white cabinet sign with black lettering and green lettering, and asked for a variance, and the council said that it was okay to leave it in there, but they didn't want it internally illuminated. Since then, she's actually put in a dark panel with lighter lettering, and so it's not fully compliant, but it was a pre-existing sign, so you, as a council's body, had allowed that. So that's what Mr. Picking's kind of looking for, is the same kind of allowance, except that this would be a new sign. It wouldn't be on an existing sign like what Ms. Turner was asking for down the street. And as you've probably seen more recently, is that Next Adventure put in a new panel on their sign. They repainted the cabinet, and then they put a dark blue panel with white lettering. Again, it's an existing internally illuminated sign, but there's nothing to prohibit that. So on the west side. So staff recommends the city council weigh the merits of the sign variance request and decide if the variance requested by Mr. Picking shall be approved or denied. I didn't look that closely, just so you know, at like the sign of the size and see if that met it. I'm looking more at whether he can have the internally backlit sign or not. So what you'd be approving tonight would not be the sign that he has proposed. It would just be using an internally backlit sign. So if the size does not meet the standards within the C1, that would be conditioned within the permit that they would have to resubmit the drawings. So all we're really here to discuss is the internally backlit sign, should that be permitted or not. And then if you would like to go beyond that, we would appreciate direction on the prohibition of new backlit signs within the C1 zone district. That concludes.
Great, thank you, appreciate it. Discussion?
So is this mainly, because I know when we've talked about this before, is this dark skies ordinance related with the backlit illumination, or is that more when we had like the Best Western trying to shoot the lights up to the moon?
Correct. Your second one, yeah.
Okay.
That's more related to not having full cutoff.
Okay. So I'll just say I don't have an issue with either one of these.
I think this is more, from what I can find, historically, it's more aesthetic.
This kind of came about while I was on council a long time ago. It was an idea of the Main Street program. It was going on back then of changing the aesthetic there in the downtown C1 to have more of that board with the light shining down on it versus having that spray out. As well as some of the panels, would go missing, and then you had light bulbs there, which is kind of the dark sky. I don't have any problem with it. I think it's a very unfortunate situation that he was in, that it had no bearing, and I think we have, as a council, have the ability to make that judgment and go, this is very unfortunate that he's having to have a cost because of someone else's hitting his current sign, and so I think he should be able to have that replaced. I'm pleased to see it looking, proposed to look very much different than the old one, but it wasn't, but in this situation, I think we may end up being a win-win for everybody on there. The second part of that question, though, I would like to see the sign committee pull that forward. I do like where we're going with that, but we'd rather have the sign committee give a recommendation on that.
Any other comments?
By backlit on this one, it just means that the light will be shining through these white letters. That's all it means. There's no external lights by any means around the outside, or is there?
I don't know, because all I've gotten so far is the schematic.
Okay.
I think that, and I can clarify this with Mr. Pickman, but I think that blue,
The blue thing?
I believe that's
shape.
probably like an
Mm.
LED light, would be my guess.
But it's not a light that shines out onto the grounds or up in the air or anything like that?
Not that
just
I'm aware of. It just looks like a blue LED strip.
Yeah, I'm personally very pleased to see something that looks professional and something to put in there besides what's there now, which is just a rough-looking bunch of vegetation. And I think it's a big improvement over the old sign.
So hearing that, it sounds like council's pretty good with the variance, and we'll continue talking down that. What about the other item that's posed as far as this continued through the C1 zone and providing staff with direction to say, develop recommendations for us on our sign code.
I like Jeremy's suggestion.
Yep,
I do too.
yep. That's real typical.
Sign committee still meeting?
So it's not really a committee, it's just staff. We have a lot of committees, as you guys know. So the idea was that staff, there's been 4 or 5 of us meeting, and then David actually has been helping us with sections of it as well, so, there's some issues, I'll just say, with the current sign code that, I don't know if you wanna go into that further, but.
It's nothing that it can't be overcome. It's just a matter of how you write certain parts of the sign code for content, but
Yeah.
it doesn't really have anything to do with this
Yeah.
particular issue.
I agree. I like Jeremy's idea. I'd rather see what you guys come out with.
So what
We
we're
decide on
proposing on
that.
this is staff is just putting something together, and then we're gonna bring it to the Economic Development Committee.
Yep.
Good.
And then they'll take a look at it and forward their recommendations to council.
Perfect.
So I guess that will be the sign committee, will be the Economic Development Committee.
There you go.
So do we need an actual motion on this, or?
Yeah, I think if the
Sign variance, yeah.
council
Yeah,
feels
the
that a
variance.
variance is appropriate, then a motion to that effect would be appropriate.
I'll make a motion to approve the requested variance for the backlit sign.
One second.
Motion by Counselor Hamlin, second by Counselor Schultz, that we accept the variance for the backlit sign. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And then, so just one point of clarification with us. When we look at the code to bring it to you, you're all open to the idea of a backlit sign with
Yes.
the dark panels?
Yes.
as
Correct.
something proposed?
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you, appreciate it.
We're open to cool stuff we've never even thought of before, Kelly.
Just no Vegas, no Vegas. All right. That said, though, have you looked at any of those like old Sandy historical museum pictures of our downtown area? Yeah, there's good reasons for a sign code.
Well, one thing that I've found is that there's always something to be done on the sign code.
Yes.
Seems like there's never any time when you're not done. Something new always pops up.
And we still have the facade program too, right? Cool.
So,
Maybe.
are you guys able to pull up this report on your?
You need to scroll to the right. I noticed these
Jeremy
things.
just had to point it out to me too.
So if you move your mouse.
Boom, it's back.
Yeah,
All
something's
right.
going on with the site, 'cause I noticed this earlier today, not on these machines, but
Just 'cause some
similar to
It's because some of the pages are 11 by 17, so when they get scanned in,
Gotcha.
All right.
There you
just
go.
review.
Okay,
Okay.
got it.
All right, well, this is quasi judicial, so, we're gonna do 15 minutes for applicant's presentation, 5 minutes for each proponent or opponent, 5 minutes for applicant's rebuttal, and 5 minutes for questions from the audience. I'm going to open this public hearing on 19-48, AP Pleasant Street Duplex, Appeal 819. I will call for any abstentions from the hearing body.
No.
Any conflicts of interest? Gonna now pull the hearing body for any ex parte contact on this. No. Now gonna call for any challenges to any individual members of the hearing body. All right. If you testify, you must raise all issues at this hearing. Your comment should state why the application should or should not be approved, or include in your proposed modifications you believe are necessary for approval according to the standards. If you do not raise specific issues at the final evidentiary hearing or by the close of the record, or fail to provide statements or evidence to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue, you will not be able to appeal the decision of the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that particular issue. Failure of the applicants to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Any party has the right to request a continuance of the public hearing, or the alternative, to have the record remain open. Staff report, Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor. So this property is on Pleasant Street, just to the west of the old Sandy Locksmith, and to the north of kind of the US Bank and the US Bank parking lot and drive-through, as you'll see highlighted here. Next slide.
Sorry, can you go back one more?
Oh, sure.
Where's US Bank at? I'm looking at
south. So it's also that parking right below it, south
Okay.
parking.
Oh, got you. All right, thank you.
And this is just a Google Earth picture, but this is what it looked like, at least when it was sunny and nice out, which didn't look the same today, but it's just a vacant piece of land, pretty flat for the most part with some vegetation on it. So the requests, that the applicant have made is a conditional use permit, for a duplex, which is defined as a dwelling containing 2 independent dwelling units, to be considered another use similar in nature to multifamily dwellings not contained within a commercial building. As part of that, there's also a design review for the proposed duplex structure in accordance with the C1 zone district standards, and multifamily, essentially, so the design that would be adherent to the multifamily design. We'll just jump into what the definition of multifamily is. I'm not gonna read this whole thing, but basically, multifamily is defined as 3 dwelling units or more within the development code. So a 2-unit building such as a duplex would not fit within this conditional use category by definition. Next page. No, that didn't show very big. The intent of the C1 zoning district is to provide the community with a mix of retail, personal services, office, and residential needs. In addition, this subsection states that while the C1 district does not permit new low-density building types, so it basically allows residential types that are in combination with a commercial use. So that's the more traditional look of what you would see with a C1 zoning district, a mixed-use building. The proposed use does not meet the intent of the C1 zone district in that the district does not permit new low-density building types. Staff has found and Planning Commission agreed that it would contradict the intentions of the C1 zone district and compromise Pleasant Street redevelopment by allowing incompatible uses. Go to the next page. We felt it was also important to recognize that the code effectively makes duplexes non-conforming. Subsection 174210A2 only permits duplexes existing prior to the adoption of the zoning code. We felt like when it was adopted, the City Council clearly sought to limit a wide range of low-density residential uses, including duplexes. This is kind of by the fact that the existing duplexes in the C1 are non-conforming. Subsection 1742 expressly states that the C1 zone does not permit new low-density building types. And thirdly, all development and uses shall be consistent with 1742, which prohibits new low-density building types. This is what led staff to conclude that a duplex is not permitted, and I think this is what led Planning Commission to the same determination. Next slide. So the applicant's appeal, as you probably read, both through their narrative and also I laid it out in one of the findings within the staff report regarding the appeal, is there's 3 basic arguments. First being that the pre-app notes were kind of confusing and kind of misled the applicant into believing that the duplex would be permitted as another use similar in nature to multifamily. The second being that it should be another use similar in nature to multifamily, which that's what I was kind of just leading you through. And the third being that lot size is constricting the site and wouldn't allow anything else to be built besides a duplex or some sort of low-density residential development. We feel that lot size is not a determining factor in approving a use. Size constraints of a property typically do not relate to whether a proposed use of a property is similar in nature to another use. The applicant has also stated that they do not believe the commercial building at this location would be economically successful. We have not seen any market analysis to back this assumption or anything else that would prove this. You know, one other thing I said at the Planning Commission hearing is that if some of the parking standard changes do change, and the C1 zoning district has less parking requirements or no parking requirements for commercial uses, you could maximize this small lot with a commercial building with no off-street parking. Would be a potential outcome of those code changes. A couple other little things to kind of point out before I jump to the next slide is that we'll want to remember also that with the new House Bill passing, House Bill 2001, that's going to require duplexes on all lots within the city of Sandy that allow single-family homes. And that will be effective July 1st, 2021, or sooner if we adopt something before then. So I think the state has been pretty solid on that. Duplexes are low density by allowing them everywhere. Single family homes are also allowed. Jumping to the next slide, please. The pre-app notes, I said it at the planning commission meeting. I'll say it again tonight. They could have been written better. I'll be the first to admit that. They could have, we look at pre-apps as providing options basically to an applicant. So we laid out different options. The pre-app notes were not intended to basically say, this one, option A will be approved by planning commission, option B probably won't, option C most definitely won't. So that it was just kind of laid out as different options, and they chose to go with one of the options. We've been asked both by this council and previous councils to kind of give options to people instead of just telling them no, and that's what we attempted to do. We have learned that we think the pre-app notes can be a little bit more explicit in the future and kind of detail that these are all options, but in no sense is staff saying any of them will be approved, especially since it wasn't even our decision. It went to planning commission for their decision. We gave a recommendation. I did want to just let everybody know we do include this caveat in the pre-app notes, and this is basically to say that we don't catch everything at the pre-app stage, and the pre-app notes are not meant to be a decision, and it doesn't nullify any code requirements that are found during land use review. And then, so the last slide I have is going right into the recommendation. The planning commission denied the requested conditional use to consider a duplex a similar use in nature to those permitted within the C1 zone district, specifically multifamily. The planning commission denied the application by a vote of 6-0. So staff recommended denial, planning commission voted 6-0 to deny it. So it's pretty resounding at least. So I think that's all I have for now. I might have some other stuff depending on what the applicant talks about.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. I'm going to call for the applicant's presentation. Please state your name and address for the record. You'll have 15 minutes.
Thank you. Wanted to hand this out real quick. It's just the site plan to give a better idea of what.
Thank you.
Might be two of them there.
Yeah, looks like it. Here, Ken.
Thank you. My name is Tracy Brown. I live at 17075 Fur Drive in Sandy. And I was hired by the applicant, Kevin Cachet, to assist him with preparing this application. And prior to meeting with Kevin, he had sent me the pre-application notes. And I was familiar with pre-application notes. I don't know if you know, I was the former planning director for the city of Sandy, so I was pretty familiar with the process. So when I looked at the notes, the staff had identified 4 options on those notes, and I think they're included in your packet of material. So the option 1 was to consider the proposed duplex similar in nature to a listed conditional use. And since I was familiar with the site and I had actually discussed it with the former property owner, this option kind of intrigued me as a possible way to make something happen on the site, since it is a pretty challenging site. So as he hired me to help him, we put together the application to kind of, argue or provide evidence how we thought the site could be considered similar in nature to a multifamily use. And I'll go a little bit more detail into that in a minute. So if we just look at the site and what I handed out, it's basically 50 feet wide by 105 feet deep. And so as he's proposed a duplex, it pretty much maximizes the site with a 5-foot setback on either side. And the second page is showing, the design or a schematic of the project. And these are, I believe, 2-bedroom, is that right, 2-bedroom? 3-bedroom units, and they have a single-car garage with a parking space in front of the garage. So each unit would be provided with 2 off-street parking spaces. One of the challenges with it is there's really not room to have parking behind the units, and for a typical duplex that wouldn't really be kind of a requirement. The unit, you can kind of see the outline of the properties just to the east and west of this. So they're both set back and they have garages. And the property directly behind this is residential as well. So this property is essentially the only vacant lot on the north side of Pleasant in a 3-block stretch between Beers and Strauss. So all the way from Beers to basically where La Bamba is. It's the only vacant lot. And everything else except the La Bamba is a residential use. So at this time I wanted to just allow Kevin to come up and talk about his perspective as the property owner, and then I'll come back and talk about a little more details about the similar nature aspect of it.
If you don't mind, you could pass these out. These are just an email that Kelly gave with me. That was, if you could see that, it's dated August 15, 2018. It's basically just showing that almost a year ago, I'd had some communication with Kelly in regards to this property. And so I guess what I'm trying to show here is the due diligence I've been tried to get put in place, because when you make an expense or you don't go out and just buy land without thinking that there's going to be some sort of use that you're presenting. And so my initial conversation with him was, and only conversations that I had with him, was proposing a duplex. And he did respond with stating what you can see here written in this email. But I guess the frustrating part about the reason I'm up here today is the fact that regardless of the continuation of my asking specifically about this one thing, I may have gotten options, but I was never told that, no, that isn't likely. It was more like, we think that this is an avenue that you can take. It was, from what I considered, a viable option. And so I did purchase the lot. I did spend the money for the applications and the drawings and all of these things. Even after the pre-app, I still had the same line of thinking. I didn't have any reason to change because no other information was given me. So either this is just an unfortunate event, of me trying to have due diligence in regards to this, or I guess I would suggest that there need to be some sort of changes made on how staff communicates to general contractors. I have built a number of buildings in the city of Sandy. I've done a commercial building. In fact, when this email was going on, we had a 5-unit that had gone through development and planning and such. So it isn't the first time I've done this. It's actually, we have experience in doing this. So I honestly, it wasn't until merely a month ago, after you get notice, a week before you get to see the planning, speak with the planning commission, that I even had any inkling of an idea that, this is shot down in flames. And so you have 1 week to prepare, some sort of presentation to the planning commission. And I mean, I had never had considered anything other than this duplex. And the reason being is that the nature of that neighborhood really doesn't have a very much opportunity as far as what the expense would be and what the return could be in any other use than what I presented. That's why I hadn't presented that. I think it's important to also note that staff has offered a significant reduction in future applications, which I can appreciate, but at the same token, it really has no bearing for what I believe the lot is really capable of supporting. And I believe that and see that as an acknowledgement of an error in their part in clearly communicating to me. I don't intend for this to be a blame game as much as it is, I make a living, but it isn't, when you're putting big chunks of money out, I thought that you could go to the planning department and get certain, lines or options that actually were viable. And so Tracy, actually, before I rant on and on, I think Tracy, I'd like him to give some more detail on the reasons why I believe this.
Mr. Casher, do you have another copy of that email for us? We didn't.
Yeah, I do.
Perfect. I need a copy for the record. Thank you.
You bet.
So yeah, this is again Tracy Brown. So yeah, I too was kind of shocked when I saw the staff recommendation before the Planning Commission, because I had, I guess, assumed, based on what I talked to Kevin about and the pre-up notes, that this seemed to be a viable option. No guarantee, but as a option that wouldn't be necessarily recommended for denial by the staff. So the question is, what is a use similar in nature? I mean, that's kind of the crux of it, and is this duplex a use that is similar in nature? So if we look at the definition we're trying to find out the definition of similar in nature. What does that really mean? There's really no definition in the code that describes that. So then we look to the dictionary for the word similar and in nature. And similar in Webster's is two things having characteristics in common. We would probably kind of intuitively know that. And in nature is defined as having such a quality or qualities. So the complete definition of this phrase, other uses similar in nature pertinent to the current question, would read, two residential uses having similar characteristics or qualities in common. And the two uses in this case are a duplex and a multifamily. We acknowledge that the definition of a duplex is 2 units and the definition of a multifamily is 3 or more units. But we would argue that because of that definition, that all of the units, whether it's a duplex or a multifamily, need to be on the same lot. So 2 units on a single lot, or 3 or more units on a single lot, that these two uses, or in this case, these two residential types, have something in common, which is different than a single family residential, which is only 1 unit on 1 lot. So it's more similar in nature to a multifamily than it is a single family. That's our primary argument to discuss, is this use similar in nature to a multifamily? We also, as a contributing factor, we think it's important to look at the lot itself and the size and the location of this lot and the limiting characteristics of that lot. Kevin looked at, as we discussed it, he kind of considered the challenges and the costs of trying to do a commercial building on this lot, given current parking standards and the requirement that parking be located to the side or behind the business. And again, this is a 50-foot wide lot, and to get a parking behind and having setbacks and a building of some sort would be extremely challenging. So he considered that. He also considered, what would be the economic viability of doing this in this location, surrounded by residential, and could he attract, businesses to locate there and be able to still make, money. That's kind of his business on the lot. And so given those factors, he really kind of decided that a duplex was the best use, given the current site constraints for the property. And so we really thought we were going down a path that made sense, both from an economic perspective and a code perspective based on what the staff had indicated previously. So for the reasons that, we discussed, we believe there are unique circumstances with this proposal that are sufficient to allow the council to approve the request as presented. The property is bordered by existing single-family residential on 3 sides, both sides and behind. And due to the size, location size, and configuration, it is unlikely it will ever be developed with a commercial use. I mean, it's hard to say ever, but at least in the foreseeable future, based on the current code and the site constraints. So the site size, limited frontage, make it extremely challenging to develop with a multifamily project as well. And based on the size of the property, the maximum number of units is 2 also. So based on today's code, you couldn't even put a multifamily on it. So really the only type of residential you could do is a maximum of 2 units or a duplex. So the applicant did rely on information from planning staff in making this determination, and given the circumstances, we believe the council can approve the application by finding that the proposed duplex is similar in nature to a multifamily use, and that site-specific conditions exist with this property and proposal which do not generally apply to other properties and which warrant it to be approved as proposed. And I thank you, and I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Questions at this time?
Tracy, I forgot his name already. Did you ever consider anything else other than the duplex? Was there any kind of configured commercial or any kind of thing that might have been put in there alternative to a duplex at all?
Well, we talked about it when we met, because in the pre-application notes, they had identified 4 options. So this was number 1 option, similar in nature to duplex. Another was a straight commercial use, or you could look at residential above, commercial below.
Right.
And because of the size and parking requirements, and for the need to have parking behind for the commercial use, we felt that it wouldn't pencil out both economically and physically. It would be very challenging. You might end up with a very narrow lot or a narrow building that would have hardly any visibility because you're needing to provide access to a parking lot. We also talked about the idea that since it's surrounded by residences, would those existing residences find that to be a favorable development pattern or not? So we looked at that. We also considered a multifamily, and again, parking is a challenge. So you need, for multifamily, for a 2-bedroom unit, you need at least 2 parking spaces for each unit. And so just at 2-bedroom, to have 6 parking spaces for this little lot we found to be very challenging. And again, as I mentioned, the code, the density requirement right now for this lot is only 2, maximum of 2. So that, in order to do more than 2, it would require a special variance to the density requirements. So that's kind of we felt that was a rolling of the dice as well. There's no guarantee you can get that.
Okay. All right.
So it's how long? Do you recall how long ago this stretch on Pleasant Street was rezoned to C1 commercial from residential?
As far as I started in 2002, and it's as far as it was done then. I don't know.
Do you recall a new residential development taking place on Pleasant Street in this
directly
zone
right
during
next
that time?
door to this, there was a property that was developed. It was also a vacant lot. And that was a development that kind of looked at, if you look at that property, it doesn't have a garage. And so that was kind of a deal where they were proposing a business below the residence, and over time, that business never really panned out.
So
it
they
really just
proposed a mixed use, and then the commercial ended up just
ended
not
up going
having
away,
longevity
yeah.
to it.
So it ended up just as a straight residential use.
Okay. But have you seen anything that was just straight residential use approved in the last 10, 15 years since this was all rezoned C1 commercial?
I mean, there's a multifamily use.
Yeah, but this.
Down on Hood Street.
That's multifamily,
Yeah, I
though.
don't think, I mean, there's not many vacant lots in the C1 in this location. I mean, those two lots, I mean, this lot now, as I mentioned, it's one of the very few lots in that stretch, and the other one next door had been vacant, maybe in, I don't know when it was, 2004 or 2005 when it got
So
sold.
given those state of facts, rezoned C1, years, we can't even remember when,
Mhm.
can't recall anything that's been approved as just residential build without a commercial mixed use kind of function. So given that, why in your professional opinion would you be shocked that this would be denied at planning?
Well, because we thought that I really considered the similar in nature as a kind of a way to make it happen. When I saw that, I'd never thought of that before, to tell you the truth. And it kind of made sense to me to get something to develop on this property. And so I thought it would, frankly, I thought it was an elegant way to allow something to happen on this lot that really is surrounded and for all intents and purposes is a residential lot because of its size. And I thought that was kind of an elegant way to make it happen. Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, appreciate it. We'll go for 5 minutes of, are we on opponent testimony?
I would see if anybody in favor first.
Oh, okay, in favor? Okay, opposed? Rebuttal?
Yeah, I just have a few things, I'm not gonna make it long. Yeah, Mr. Cachet's right, I am sympathetic, and that's why I've offered as the director to greatly reduce future fees, because I mean, I'll be the first to admit, like I said, that the cabinets could have been a little clearer. However, there was in the sale disclosure, which I think we attached, kind of doing your own due diligence. And then also, I just went back through my emails today, and I had correspondence with the previous owner, Miss Deborah Mills, who's a realtor in town here. And she was asking questions about what they could do with the property because they had been kind of denied in the past, putting a duplex or triplex by previous planning staff. And I had told her that the only possibility I could think of at that time was mixed use with commercial and residential. Now, Ms. Mills decided not to pursue any options and decided to sell it to Mr. Cachet instead. So, I don't know what was talked about in the sale or anything like that, 'cause I'm not privy to that. But I did have communication with the previous owner. I told him in my email communication that mixed use is probably the best use for the site. The only other thing I want to bring up is something that Jeremy actually brought up it was just kind of timely, in the Sandy Health Clinic zone change. And that's, the site is small, it is constrained, as Mr. Brown and Mr. Cachet both pointed out. But as we see, and as Jeremy brought up probably about an hour ago, is that as these C1 properties disappear, you don't get like a second chance at it. And there's a whole bunch of houses on Pleasant Street that I think, or I hope over time, go away and get redeveloped into commercial. But I think if we start allowing brand new residential developments such as this duplex right on Pleasant Street, it's gonna remain residential for the next 30 to 40 years most likely. So that would be my only caution, is that if you do decide to approve this tonight, that the more redevelopment that we allow that's strictly residential on Pleasant Street, I think the dream or the hope that someday Pleasant Street will redevelop into a commercial district with little boutiques and retail, I think it's just gonna be harder and harder to become a reality is all.
So,
And that's,
Kelly,
Yes.
follow-up questions here. Given the same state of facts that I provided Tracy on C1, years of non-new residential development, why is our planning department offering this up as a potential option during the pre-application process?
probably shouldn't have. But it's, you know, it's a fine line that we walk, because we're asked to give options, and that's what we were trying to do.
Yeah.
Whether it was executed well or not, I'm not gonna be defensive and say it was, but I think we just have to take a harder look at that on future perhaps.
You know, I'm not gonna, and you acknowledged it up front in the presentation. We've gotta continue to realize when we're having these meetings that, you know, this individual's taking this hard-earned money and investing it in this property for this project, right? And he's making business decisions now. I wish there might have been a little bit more due diligence done in this case for a variety of reasons, but at the same time, they're going to you and your department as the experts in the planning and also, I mean, you work underneath the vision that our council provides. So it's not a hidden secret in our council goal settings and everything else that our vision for Pleasant Street is something that's what you just described in the years ahead to start moving that area into a vibrant destination for retail and commercial activity that allows us to build off of our downtown core with a highway running down the middle of it, right? We talk about, it's like rolls off my tongue, it's something we're talking about. So I just, moving forward, I gotta hope that in our pre-application for Pleasant Street, that new residential development is not something that's going to be provided as a possible option and path forward, so that we're not continually having, you know, these kinds of meetings. Because I just, it's my hope, no developer in this town should be surprised to hear that Pleasant Street is our vision of a commercial center for our future. We've got to get the word out to our developers, because we want them developing that on Pleasant Street. That's how we do this together. So that's kind of my rant. Apologize to use this moment for that, but frustrated by the way this whole thing went down. With that, we're still in session here. So I guess this is questions and comments need to be directed towards the staff recap until we go into discussion, and then we'll open it up for discussion.
There's still rebuttal.
Rebuttal for the applicant.
Yep. Okay, now there'll be time for 5 minutes of rebuttal as well from your side. Thank you.
Yeah, so, go ahead, Kevin.
Well, I guess my main concern was definitely about staff's way of handling it in regards to, you know, giving an option. I mean, what is an option? Isn't an option something that should have a path of choice? And it costs me not only purchasing the lot, but $10,000 of money just to come up with the answer of, by the way, no. Duplex isn't something that we would, I mean, it just seemed obvious. And it's just, it's beyond frustrating. And I mean, I'm a builder in this town. I love the town of Sandy. I'm not planning on going away anywhere, but I mean, I thought you could go to the planning department to get, you know, definitive answers, and it must be, you know, some sort of, like, you know, if an option is an option, it needs to be an option, not something that is not an option. So that's basically where I stand. And I really do believe that I have presented something that fits into this neighborhood. You know, things don't get built out to the way maybe some people would like them to be because of economic reasons. And this street, I mean, says it all. I mean, that lot has been there for years and years and years, undeveloped. And when this opportunity came around, well, I jumped on it because I thought that was an avenue. So that's all I have to say.
I just want to quickly say again, Tracy Brown. So yeah, there's reference to previous pre-app or application, and as I was the director, we never had a pre-app previously on this or an application, so we don't know exactly how that would have shaken out. And I think the previous owner is here and he wants to speak. I think he kind of missed how it worked when you mentioned, and I believe he signed up out there, so if you don't mind giving him the opportunity.
It would have to be during the proponent's time.
Are you rebuttal
looking
at
for
this
legal.
point? I mean, is there something to be rebutting?
I don't know what he wants to say. He kind of looked at me and he said, this is his first time at a meeting. I don't know if he missed it or I didn't kick him, but.
It's the applicant's rebuttal at this point, so I mean, I think it's.
Maybe past that point.
Yeah,
like,
past that point.
So, I don't know what he would have to say. I mean, I did talk to him several times as the director, and he had initially said he wanted to try to look at doing a triplex on it, which is 3 units, and I pointed out that, the maximum density is 2 units. So, time went on, and then I believe he told me he had also talked to the city about different options, and that other uses similar nature might have been discussed as well. I don't know. I wasn't there, but that's all. So hopefully you can see that maybe this is similar nature, and I know Kevin would appreciate approval. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Now we're 5 minutes questions from the audience.
No.
Okay.
No.
Well, it's on here. I mean, it's.
No, this would be just a time for considering closing the hearing and then deliberating. That would be next.
Since we already had rebuttals.
All right. Well, so we'll call for a motion to close the public hearing.
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
There's a motion to close the public hearing by Councilor Exner, a second by Councilor Schultz. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Call for discussion from the hearing body. Who wants to go first on this one?
Well, I mean, I don't mind. As I stated earlier, from a couple of years ago when, our C1, and then Kelly was, commented on my comment earlier in the afternoon, or in the evening, that, we only have so much C1 areas. It's not coming in. And like 2 years ago, the council had changed rezoning some areas to go to residential, to allow for the residential up here by the post office there. And so then that will never become commercial in the C1 district again. It's unfortunate, but we do have this Pleasant Street master plan that has designated that area. The zoning has been in place for more than 20 years that I'm aware of. I don't know the exact time when C1 zoning was established versus C2 zoning or residential back in the day. It's been more than 20 years in the making on that, and that's what it is. The property to the west of that, was that the locksmith
The
business?
property to the east.
I think it's the white square.
The property to the west was the property that Mr. Brown mentioned, that was a house with a little garage that was
Yeah.
marked as commercial.
Right.
So to the east was the locksmith
Correct,
place,
yeah.
and then to the, okay, and then the east of the side. So, but as we go forward and we do build, residential's in a commercial area, the stated, you're looking 30, 40, 70 years before that transpires to being in that commercial area. We've talked about having residential in C1, but that was above the current spot.
Right.
I think there's always an option to submit anything to the planning commission that is not there, that doesn't meet the code, and that's the point of having a planning commission, and for them to weigh those same criteria there and give that's always been an option and has never been, in my aware, denied that option. So I think those are always options to do, is present that to the present anything you want, and then get, ask for the planning commission and then the council to review that if that's not what was being allowed in any zone. As far as the parking on that, that's where we are working and communicating and talking with here currently about what should we do with the parking in the economic development group and coming forward and that type of thing because of those restrictions. And I think that can be as well could be conditioned, could have been conditioned in the planning commission or council as well going forward. So, but yeah, I would be not in favor of changing and eliminating C1 property from being C1 property as a commercial, especially in that Pleasant Street. So.
I'll tell you, I mean, this is what having a vision for Pleasant Street, this is kind of the medicine on it a little bit, and this isn't going to be the first time that we all look at this. This is going to be a persistent problem as these homes are older and folks are moving out and people aren't wanting these properties to be kind of long-term residences. The idea is you need to reconstruct, rebuild, and you've got to sell your property to do that to someone who wants to do it. And the truth of the matter is whether we like it or not, these lots, he's right? When he gets up here and he says, I can't go commercial on this thing. Like, who's going to come in and buy that property tomorrow and turn it in? Whether we change the parking requirements and everything else, right? Who's going to come in tomorrow, purchase this property and turn it into a retail commercial establishment where it sits? And who's going to do that in the next couple of years? Who's going to do that in the next 10 years? And if we're successful as a council in our leadership of getting the community campus going, right, and really using that as a catalyst for Pleasant Street, this is very much further down the road from that. So even as these pockets kind of open up, this is away from the action. And so I'm not leading us down the path of saying, yeah, we should just then give up and turn this into a residence, but this is the first that this council is having to see, and we'll just continue to see this as these homes get older and get vacant and these properties become available. They're not going to just flip the next day, and we're going to have some property owners that are in some pretty hard spots as far as what their next move in life is, as they have this property that's in their asset holdings, in their portfolio, so to speak, right? And they're trying to figure out where to go on the next stage of their lives. They're going to be holding on to a property that's residential, that's in a residential neighborhood, that's zone C1 commercial, and has leadership in this community that has another long-term vision for it. So I guess I'm not asking anyone here to change your mind on the Pleasant Street and what our visions are, but I do think we need to have our eyes wide open on the impacts our decisions make and kind of what that means for these property owners. So really think about that, because you got one individual in front of us that this is dramatically affecting his pocketbook.
Sure.
Yeah.
I can understand both arguments and understand that person that purchases property. I'm a realtor, so I get that part, that you purchase a piece of property and you think maybe there might be an option to put something on it that you can make some money off of, get some rents and that kind of thing. It really is a kind of thing that makes people buy and sell property and develop that from a piece of lot which we've struggled to keep mowed, and we've struggled to keep, whatever else goes on in there that doesn't really add to the community benefit. It's more of a who knows what we're going to do with that. And it has been vacant for years and years. We, out of our office, tried to sell the house just to the west of that more than a couple times, and we were really trying to make it into a commercial property. It's hard to do that. On the other hand, I look to the south of this and I see a fair amount of commercial. You've got the bank, you've got the dentistry, and this kind of a strip mall, L-shaped piece of property there that has commercial right across the street from it. So there is a chance, and to me, in my mind, I would hope that in planning we could take a look at this piece of property and say, let's find some sort of method that on this narrow piece of property that we could find a way to make it into a commercial, or at least some sort of conditional use that makes some sense, so that Kevin can make a forward-moving, finding piece of property that he can make money off of and get a profit for it. Because that's the purpose for anybody that's gonna be in a commercial venture like this. I am also bought into the fact that we have a plan here. We've known this for years, decades, that this is gonna be a commercial part of our city. It's the place where we're gonna go. I cannot remember a time we didn't have that in our minds. And I know in terms of the history of things, I've talked with Tracy about this in the past, long past. To me, it's hard to believe that I could put this into a residential piece of property and make it any sense at all in terms of how the C1 works. I think that's kind of where I'm at too. I'm really it's just hard for me to say, no, sorry. But I would hope that we could come up with a strategy to make this into a viable piece of property. The parking lot evaluation not to be denied, that ought to be some way we can make this work. So.
Jan?
Yes, I had a question of staff. Is there some way that if there was a living unit above and a commercial use below, that there could be enough variance in parking to allow for something to go forward? Or is this really just an unbuildable lot?
I think if the parking changes that I'm proposing go forward, I think it would be viable then. But I don't know if those will be adopted by council at this point, so I don't know if I have an answer for that.
I'm optimistic.
I'm optimistic, you know. I've talked to planning commission, they were pretty gung-ho about it, and I've talked to different council members on, you know, as I've seen people, and everybody's been pretty optimistic about the idea of it as well. I guess one thing I would kind of tack onto that in addition is kind of like some direction to staff on the conundrum that pre-app meetings and that advice to applicants creates, because we're trying to be business friendly in the sense of saying, yeah, there's options, but we assume those options, there's no guarantees with options is what that's how I look at options. You know, people come in with variances or different requests all the time that I think there's no way in heck that's ever gonna get approved, and then it goes to the planning commission, and even with the staff recommendation against the variance gets approved. So I just have no idea when planning commission's gonna approve or deny something, and so I think staff, and I think it's a bigger discussion than tonight, but I think staff would appreciate, like, how do we weave this difficult scenario of trying to provide positive feedback to applicants, but also telling them no when we don't think it's a viable option. And I know that didn't really answer your question in full, but I don't know if I have an answer for you until I know which way everybody's going on the parking.
What you're proposing for parking, how would it affect this lot?
So what I'm looking at right now is all new commercial uses and existing commercial uses within the C1 would have 0 off-street parking required. Residential would, I haven't solidified what the residential would be yet, but the residential would have a great reduction. However, on this lot in particular, if you were to do that, you'd probably need to eliminate all parking or somehow just condition that the parking is only for the residential use or something like that.
Thank you.
I understand Kelly's calls a conundrum problem, because I know in several conversations in the past, and I suspect there's others on the council have done this, is I have been saying, find a way to say yes, you know, move a potential property towards construction, find a way and make that happen. And that pressure's probably, it sounds like it's very well heard, and I can understand their concerns in that area. So in my mind, I can see a rationale for how they got to that point. It's just difficult for me to say I need to let this piece of commercial go into a residential, but I do know, you know, on Kelly's side, I know I have spoke to him specifically about finding a way, and that pressure is there.
Oh, yeah.
I want that to actually stay there, but we should certainly be Kelly has mentioned it a couple times now, to his credit, that it probably wasn't presented in the best way. Gotta find a way to do that. I'm just not willing to jump into a changeover.
Lori?
Well, I don't wanna get lost in the details here, but, you know, in Kelly's email, the way I read it, you know, he's giving it an option would be, the word option is an option. There's nothing in there that says it would be approved, that there's a guaranteed approval, you know. We give people options all the time, right? And whether they're accepted or denied, it's kind of up to the committee. So, I appreciate the position you're in. I appreciate the position that you're in. You know, it's kind of a lose-lose, but I agree with Carl. This was a C1 zoned area when he purchased the property, and I'm not willing to give that up.
Additional questions, comments, discussion? Yeah. Motions.
I make a motion that we deny the applicant's request for variance on, I guess it's multi-use. I'm not sure if I remember what the.
Could just be that you deny the appeal request.
Okay.
That would.
I deny the appeal request.
I second that.
There's a motion by Counselor Exner, second by Counselor Peetzold, that we deny the motion request. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on.
I just want to say thank you, Council. I know that was a very tough thing to hear.
Absolutely. Thank you, staff, and thank you for showing up. Appreciate it. I need to find my agenda. All right, report from the city manager.
All right, just a couple quick updates. We'll look at the date of January 11th for goal setting that came out of the work session today. So we'll take a peek and see if that works, scheduling wise and facility wise too. The other night was the 13th that we're still planning to do the open house at the community center. And I mentioned the possibility of inviting board and commission members to that as well. We'll start running the survey for members of the public to chime in, you know, through a SurveyMonkey survey, just to add their comments. People that can't make it in person to either the goal setting or open house to lend their input to the goal setting. The mayor touched on this in I think in the workshop, but originally we had the community survey results for the Parks and Recreation survey scheduled for tonight, but that was moved to January 6th. We wanted a little more opportunity to get the word out and get more results to come in and get tabulated. But that survey is closed at this point except for the open online survey. And looking forward to a nice night on January 6th to have that presented and a chance to get more of the members of the public aware of that date so they can tune in. And then just finally, you know, enjoy the holiday season. 2019 has been very busy, and you know, you guys should be proud of all the things you've accomplished this year. It's been pretty impressive, and I know staff, we all appreciate all your work and engagement and time that you put in this year. So I hope you have time to relax and enjoy the holidays and the new year. And we're looking forward to staying right back on track in 2020. So.
Thank you. Committee and council reports. Councilor Schultz.
No committee reports. Library board will probably reconvene in January or February, depending on where we're at with task force meetings. Shout out to everybody that helped with the tree lighting and Santa breakfast. Those were both amazing as always, and we got to do the trolley ride, and my children were just enthralled with the whole experience. We went to John's neighborhood. It was awesome. I got an email from Representative Williams that she has the child care stuff on her radar, which is amazing. So I'm going to be meeting with her at the beginning of January and get our project on her radar. Sounds like it already is.
ball rolling with what we can do here in Sandy.
Awesome. Good job. Counselor Exner.
Went through a very invigorating experience here last week and missed a couple of different things, but having a heart attack is not my idea of it too very invigorating, but.
And why are you here?
He was at my house a couple nights ago
Oh,
too.
no.
I have to admit that I'm a little bit tired.
He's going door to door now too?
But I did want to say thank you for the flowers. I appreciate that. Didn't think I was going to get flowers. I've never gotten flowers from people before. It's usually my wife gets them. But in the process of sitting around doing almost nothing, because all these wires are stuck into me, I thought to myself, what can I do to say thanks back? And one of the things I thought I did is, I know that when we get elected, we always vote to, or swear to obey the Constitution. So I thought maybe I'd swing it back at you guys and give you a copy of the Constitution. so that you can memorize and understand and know what you exactly voted for. It's also got the Declaration of Independence.
Carl on the cover.
Get that right. Yeah, that's right. He's got hair, so in my earlier years.
I guess you get two.
All right, so moving on.
Younger Carl.
Nice.
To Jordan, these orange covers that are on the new telephone, no, not telephone, power poles, are they intended to stay there? If they do are we gonna be able to affect the color change on them?
It's a great question.
Bright orange.
Green
does
and
not-
yellow.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm thinking about painting the whole pole.
They're not in our brand.
The wires are going up, aren't they?
They
Are
look
they-
that
are they-
way,
are
but
they
I
gonna
don't
raise?
think so.
It looks like some of
think
them may
it's
stay there.
it's an illusion.
They've moved
That's a
on.
good question. I don't know if they're there as a stabilizing factor as they're doing their work, or if they're
Okay.
staying there permanently. But we can find out for you.
I don't think it quite fits in with the Sandy brand in orange. As I look in
Winning.
my office up through to the mountaintop and I see these orange.
He's a
sleeves.
beaver, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, Sandy's winning, orange does not project that.
Well, it's a beaver's color, so I thought maybe, well, what's in there?
I don't know what they're.
Those are off.
Okay. Sandy Art Commission position, how close are we to getting to a place where we're ready to start? Was that conversation this afternoon about the, how we selected folks, what we're waiting for to make that happen, or?
We would like to
We're-
form a subcommittee to do the interviews.
We have an art commission meeting on Wednesday night, and I know I'm gonna be asked, so I put the burden on you.
So the scheduling is a challenge coming up because of on the 6th, we're trying to keep that meeting light except for the community campus, or the Parks and Recreation Community Survey, Community Campus Surveys. There's a couple other business items that we can have on consent that night, but, and then because of the holiday on the 20th, unless the council wants to meet on the 21st of January, we're looking at February to do the interviews for an arts commission appointment. Now, the alternative is, listening to council direction tonight, have, like I said, a couple counselors and the board chair meet and do the interviews and then bring that recommendation to council, and we might be able to do that by
That's how we're gonna do it.
January 6th.
That's the way to do
Okay.
it, yeah.
That's a bet.
Okay.
That's our new rule.
Yep.
Whether adopted or not.
Like it or not. So, again, remind me maybe I'm just tired, the timing again on this?
I
one?
think there's only 2 applications, so, I mean, if we can fit it in, sometime
January
between
some-
now and January 6th.
21st?
Yeah.
In January sometime, I could say that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
Maybe, okay,
Yep.
that's all I'm looking for. And that's it for me.
Absolutely.
Glad to be back.
Good to have you.
Glad to have you.
I know you're gone.
So I was appointed to the policy committee of LOC, and I'm wondering what that means for my role on the city council. Am I able to just participate freely with my ideas, or am I to come back to you guys and get your support for those ideas?
I think you have to do what we want, Jan.
Get a poll every
So
time you
I
make a
don't
decision.
know how that's worked in the past, so I just wanted some direction.
Has there been a representative?
I don't know if she was a
Okay.
representative, she was on maybe she was on the planning, for the LOC conference, maybe
Mhm.
that wasn't on the
Oh.
policy part of it, but I know I've sat on policies at the state of Oregon wearing multiple hats, and I know you wear multiple hats too.
Yeah, right.
And it was always under the approach of, they're here for, who you are, not necessarily the whole council. It's not like C4 where, in my belief,
Right.
you guys correct me if you think differently, but whereas C4, you're representing
Right.
the council at it. If they don't like you at that, they can kick you.
Right.
Am I speaking out of turn there?
No,
or
and sometimes,
that's how it might feel?
I think each year they have a, a platform that they have through their committees and then share with the cities, and then we can have the full council give input. And I'm sure there'll be opportunities for items that come up that, maybe you want the full council to reflect on. But other than that, the role of LLC is, one of the roles is to advocate and speak on behalf of, their members, which is the cities of Oregon. So hopefully they're pretty consistent with what the city council has in mind, so there shouldn't be too much conflict.
I surely would come back with what I hear and get some ideas from folks.
You do you, Jan.
What was that?
Be you, be you.
The Transit Committee is meeting Wednesday night, so I don't have a report yet on that. One thing I came across at a meeting in Hood River a couple weeks ago was Clean Water Services, I don't know if you have heard, are making what they call suds from Seward. They have cleaned up the water.
John's all in.
Sounds like an awesome idea.
Not in my bathtub, you won't.
They cleaned up the water to the point that they got a permit from DEQ to be able to give it to brewers to make beer. So
those sounds.
DEQ's idea was that children aren't going to drink it. You'd have to drink a lot of beers to have any impact.
I'd be in trouble.
So let's go for it. So
my.
they have this wonderful mobile trailer, and so it actually cleans the water as it rolls around and drops that off at different brewers so they can be in a contest for the best brew made from reuse water.
Reuse water.
Reuse
Poo
water.
water.
You know what I love about this?
Called second
Creativity.
chance, second chance,
Not that we probably would do that from the water from Roslyn Lake, but I thought it was an interesting idea, and there was a Wall Street
Do need a
Journal
brewery.
article on the front page saying from sewer to suds.
Wow, is that Class A
Yeah, that's what
water
he's
that
kinda
they're talking
talking
about?
about. Yeah.
Yeah, they even got approved by the Oregon Health Authority, which I was a little surprised at.
There you go.
So that's all I have.
All
We don't
right.
need high Portland water, we just.
I don't even know how to follow.
Yeah,
that.
you really don't.
Jan, I can help them with some naming conventions. I've got a
Okay.
pretty creative mind for naming
Pass
stuff
you
after
on as a
poop and pee.
consultant.
Just a couple things, Oregon Trail School Board meeting last week. At the meeting in January, they're gonna start their their pre-polling and surveying discussions through workshops. So for their bond, they're gonna be going out for another bond. So I think there's already a little bit of committee work starting on that. Were you gonna say something too, or are you just leaning up for a drink of your pea beer? Would that be legal to drink during council meetings as well too?
The non-alcoholic version would be, yeah.
Okay. Aside from that, was kind of interesting in our workshop, going through the liaison responsibilities. I'm liaison with Oregon Trail School Board, and a lot of the responsibilities that are assigned to a liaison are not happening or feasible, or I don't even know if it's realistic, with a board outside of our jurisdiction, such as the Board of Education. So outside of that, just want to do a huge thank you to Andy, Muna, Transportation Department for doing an awesome night of bringing the trolley through our neighborhood. We put in a lot of work in the neighborhood to get people to put up lights. I've offered and loaned out ladders multiple times as well too. But thank you for pulling that together. And then this Friday night, if you've got nothing going on, we've got special arrangements at our house. Santa is actually the real Santa will be at our house, not one of the imposters that you may have had breakfast with or anything like that, but the real Santa with his real sleigh as well too. So we actually have a sleigh from my wife's family's farm outside of Dallas, Oregon. We believe it's an old Russian sleigh, wooden sleigh, probably over 100 years old. And so we had it brought up here. I actually sanded it down and restained it and put some decorations on it, but that will be the photo scene, and we'll have a backdrop as well too for photos with Santa. Giving out hot chocolate, cookies, candy canes. We will have tents as well too, so you don't have to worry about getting wet. But collecting canned food donations for Sandy's Helping Hands. They'll be on site as well too to collect cash donations. And through the month of December, any cash donations made to Sandy's Helping Hands or donations made in the memo line mentioning Sandy Light Show, our family will match up to $1,000 for the month of December. So if you get a chance to show up, please do. We'd love to have you over. You can have hot chocolate, or if you give me a little nudge, I can give you some fireball from inside as well too. So.
Careful that fireball.
Yep, that's it.
That comes with a matching donation as well.
Is that right? Yeah. One for you and one for me.
I don't really have anything. I was unable to attend the Parks meeting last week due to work, but we'll do the mic drop when we do the survey results, so that'll be the big thing. Other than that, you know, I gave you a bad time about that tree, and when I went up to the tree lighting, it was much bigger standing there in person than it looked from the street. So I apologize for hassling you. It's so bigger.
Still look good.
I'll tell you what my kids said about it when we drove by it for the first time. Later off.
Mine too.
Just to let you know that the economic development meeting will be normally on the first Wednesday of the month going forward, but for the first one, that's New Year's, so it'll be the 2nd in January. Excited to kind of get that going. And
So on the 8th or the 2nd?
the 8th.
8th.
Yeah, the second Wednesday for January there, and then the Sandy style for the new McDonald's and the hotel out back just looked really nice. And I know we've gone round and round with the owner of the hotel and getting it there, and you hear nothing but positive things about our Sandy style from even the Tractor Supply, which now that some of those quote unquote fake windows are on there, people are really commenting on how great that box building looks. So anyways, just wanted to say that there. PGE on Sunday morning headed through town there, stopped traffic and blocked off all one lane of traffic there going through the day. And I thought we had on the council said, hey, they were going to do that at night and not Sunday. Mid-morning, afternoon. I don't know if you were working, but you would have seen the tail end.
Yesterday or the Sunday before?
No, yesterday. Completely blocked off the whole road, and they're just as they were working in what I would consider one of the more, it's not ski season yet, but that doesn't stop people from moving down.
It is ski season. They're open.
They are. Well, you're right. They are open. So I don't know.
They've been having daytime closures too. Last week, in
Single
fact, on
lane,
Friday, Mike and I were talking.
Today
about
they
it,
were single lane.
Yeah.
But they came to council, I thought, and maybe I'm remembering there that they were going to be doing that at night work and things like that, because we talked about noise and other things to help mitigate some of that traffic as we get backed up town. This is kind of, I understand they need to do the work, but it's also the community.
I think they've been working 24 hours a day or real close, because I know that they were outside the station at like 1 a.m. the other day still working, so.
Hopefully not keeping you up.
At the last OBAC, which is Oregon Broadband Advisory Council, I chaired that meeting in Salem. And it was a really interesting meeting. Jan would appreciate this. The different irrigation districts we have around our state and irrigating, something was invented out of Hood River there that helped with the irrigation and generating electricity off of it and now being used in other locations. But they also presented, coming out of that Hood River district there, about encapsulating all of their pipes and irrigation as they go. And you're saying, why is water at the Oregon Broadband Advisory Council? What they did is they overlaid that map, especially in Deschutes County, but in other counties as well, as if they had just a little bit of money from the state, they could be laying the conduit and fiber out into these rural areas to run cell phone towers and wildfire, communications, because they're gonna have to dig up every irrigation ditch in all these areas, and so they're looking for federal funds and that. And so when you look and overlay that as we get into the 5G, the Internet of Things, and it's quite amazing. It's quite amazing. I know you, Jan, were in Deschutes County there. That irrigation district is quite massive, going everywhere, all up into Sisters. And then on Wednesday, I was asked to by the Lane Council of Governments, the LCOG. If you're familiar with that group there, maybe those that went to University of Oregon would be asked if I would present to their group on the Sandy pioneering side of fiber and internet there, which I found really interesting because they've created another group that loves to rival us in the national news and in Oregon news, and they wanted to be cheaper, so like 5 cents cheaper on a gig of internet than we are, but in their downtown area. But so I will be calling into that on Wednesday, telling our story again and our pioneering spirit and how we were able to make it work. So.
Great, thank you. Couple things. One from C4. So we just did. We were actually the first county in the state to do a full county-wide housing assessment, and that came back and went through a lot of the findings for that. As you may or may not know, Sandy did not participate in that because we ourselves, along with Lake Oswego and one other city I can't remember, had just recently done our own housing assessment, so we already had the results from. Now, I'm glad you're here, Kelly. So on ours, because I wasn't here for all that, did we do a big presentation and go through the results, and were there takeaways from that? And would it maybe be worth us, I'm sitting there feeling left out a little bit as everybody's getting the results from their housing assessment. Would it be something that we'd be interested in? Have we already seen it, made decisions off of it? Would we like to revisit it again?
I don't remember it very well.
Well, I think Kelly answered this,
Yeah.
but wasn't it not just a housing thing? It was when we did the urban growth boundary expansion. We went through all that work and just did that, and that was part of what they would be doing.
We did the buildable lands inventory, the economic opportunities analysis, and the housing needs analysis. So it's much more of a grand scale of analyzing future lands and the needs of those lands than what the county was doing. The county also talked to me about it, and they wanted in the magnitude of $10,000+, and it literally right on the heels of what we had just adopted and had approved through DLCD. So we're like, why spend more money on this right now? David could go into this probably in much better detail than me, but with that new House Bill 2003, we're going to be required to do these every 8 years, and so our next Schedule 1's we're going to have to update it again in 2024. I just got the schedule.
Okay. Well, I know, so the county right now, they've basically posed to everybody at C4, go back to your councils and municipalities, talk about how you would like to partner from the county. County's supposed to be doing the same, right? How would you like to partner with the cities? But, really is what our housing assessment is, where our needs are as far as housing, where do we stack up with everybody else? It would just be interesting to kind of revisit some of those topics that we learned.
I think it would be a good idea to bring that back up at a future workshop where what we have currently with the housing, and we know what's already been added into the city limits, but also been built on what's available, to have a real understanding of the need or not the need, or not to have a survey or anything, but to go over the one that was already
done,
and what's changed in it, to have a good understanding. Because what I've been talking with people is we don't have some of the places for people to move into.
Well, the big discussion was, is they're looking for rural parts of the county maybe, and they go, well, yeah, but it gets real expensive because you got to bring utility to all those properties once you develop. And so if you don't want to go down that direction, do you go to kind of redevelopment of some of these older neighborhoods? Well, now you're going into affordable neighborhoods, redeveloping them and making them unaffordable. So Councilor Lee said, I was hoping you guys would be looking for solutions at this meeting. He said, no solutions, just problems, which is really, what it does. But you have to go through the problems, discuss the problems and the pitfalls of possible solutions to get to the answer, right? So
Welcome to C4.
Yeah, right. Hey, it wasn't on bylaws though. It wasn't on bylaws, so we'll go with that.
Is that report on the website someplace or
Send you
link?
guys a link to it tomorrow.
Okay, great.
Perfect.
And if you wanna follow up, you can just talk to Jordan and I can, or something. If you could please not have it in the next few months.
No problem.
My calendar's a little bit, packed already.
So the other big thing coming, you may have seen in the news recently, they're gonna, as this transportation bond, metros bringing down, so that's a big topic, is everybody's trying to get our projects on the big metro bond. And, so that's gonna be a variety of different funding mechanisms for that, but really Clackamas County is pushing hard for the Sunrise Express, to be added in. So some of us rural, mayors, Malala, Decatur, Canby, we met last week. Lori was actually able to join us. And we're looking to try to advocate for that project to be included in Metro. And what we're looking, unless someone kind of lifts up a hand and says no, is the general message is we're here to assist in kind of solving Oregon's housing crisis. It's some of the fastest growing communities in the state out here in eastern Clackamas County. But if that's going to be the deal, where we're part of the solution, then you've got to assist us in getting these folks to their jobs back, right?
Amen.
So,
Absolutely.
and that's kind of the general, and this is the big way for us to be able to do that. On that, there was some discussion on the widening of I-205 being a big priority in this, for us to advocate for in the short session. So I did speak up on that as it to be the project that we all fight for. And the reason for that is as we're all familiar with, in the long session, we're all going for our Christmas tree bills, our own funding, our green studies, our bypasses, all our different projects. But the short session, it being short in nature, being very supposed to be kind of patching things up, there's not as many ways we're crossing over each other. So this is kind of a unique opportunity for us, a county, to say, let's go big picture on this, speak with one voice on something that we want regionally to be done. So that was kind of the direction we went on that. Survey, Jordan mentioned the survey results, and we're going to be looking to have those results coming in January. Really felt with the community talking a lot about those results, we really deserve to make kind of a big deal, let them know that they were coming forward. Those results, so no matter what comes out of that, there's going to be a lot of decisions for us to make as a council and work that we need to do. We're going to need to probably have a work session pretty soon afterwards to really start kind of plotting forward the path, one direction or the other that we're going to be on. But really looking forward to working with all of you on that. And then finally, as the year's ending up, just wanted to thank staff, especially during the holidays. We had a lot of events. This was a busy month, just like July can be in the summer. It really puts on display just how talented and our staff is, and how much work they do, and how much we should value them, and what a great community that we live in. And this is it, right, for 2019. There's an old adage that if you haven't made anyone mad, you're not doing anything. And we all made a lot of people mad this year, you guys. Staff really upset some people. Council really upset some people. We're all working our tails off. I'm really proud of everybody here in the city, from leadership, Jordan, all the way down through the staff or department heads. I mean, it's really exciting times, and it's with exciting times comes some of these controversial things that we deal with, but that's why we ran for the job and why we're all in positions of leadership. And I know with Carl's kind of health deal that he went through this last week, it really brings to light like how much we've all kind of come together as a group and really grown to care about each other and support each other and really work together. So it's been a really big year for me. I've really appreciated working with all of you and everything.
Yep.
So, thank you.
I do.
Yep. All right.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas.
Oh, and they're closing Council Road down here in a little bit for the piping. I don't know if you all got that email.
Yeah, I saw that.
What?